is worried the nation's healthcare debate might be getting political, and a bullied 8th grader incorrectly thought classmates would leave him alone during a field trip to the 9/11 memorial. Don't mistake my kind, gentle tone for one of love or support. This is The Onion Week in Review. According to a report released this Tuesday, no one, absolutely no one, will ever stack up to your 8th grade boyfriend, Brian Bowden, who you dated for 6 weeks in middle school. A 43-page study from Stanford University confirmed that no other guy in your life will ever be as kind or caring as the 13-year-old who held your hand during the scary parts of Jurassic Park, who had that really cool chain wallet, and who bought you 2 pink carnations on Valentine's Day. The report added that while your current boyfriend does have a lot going for him, he will certainly never cut class with you to listen to the dead Kennedy's Frankenchrist on a Sony Discman. Brian used to do that with you. He used to do it all the time.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Yes, it is Free Talk Live.
Oh, good, we made it.
The live, what do we call it?
Call-in radio show.
Radio talk program where you can control the airwaves. I'm sorry, I'm having a technical issue here that I'm...
Perfect timing.
Yeah, I'm not... Well, we were doing...
Here, let me see if I can give out the number while you're doing stuff.
Yeah, please do.
To take control of those airwaves, please dial 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And if we like you, we'll put you on the air to talk about whatever it is you want to talk about.
And if we don't, we'll probably will put you on the air to talk about whatever you want to talk about.
We might just leave you on hold for the duration of the show.
What?
Just
talk again into that thing?
No.
Talk? Yeah?
What? Talk some more?
Talk some more?
Okay.
You sound quiet to me.
Could be.
Probably because I did the mic check and I have a much less booming voice than the Mountaineer.
I'm looking for something else because something is going awry right now.
So, end the Fed? Yes or no, Peakless?
I don't care.
Oh,
honestly.
okay. All right.
Like, no, I really did care before the invention of Bitcoin
to
end the Fed. At the moment, there's basically a fight between the European Central Bank and people attached to them and the World Economic Forum. And so that's the sort of communist side.
Okay.
And the fascist side in the Federal Reserve and the American banking elite. And there's basically this big fight between the two of them over who gets to run the world.
Okay.
So I don't care who loses. I just hope that they inflict as many, points of damage on the other side before they go down.
And that,
what is this, D&D?
And that chick who beat up the IRS agent shouting "End the Fed" like wife material or pass?
Which way we swiping that one?
Oh, okay.
But it sounds like wife material just based on that.
She was arrested for beating up an IRS agent and shouting, "End the Fed" the whole time. So
it's a point in her favor for sure. I mean, that's a good starting point.
She was pretty cute.
What's her number?
I don't know. 603-283-6160.
Of course it is.
All right.
For a good time call.
I believe.
Yeah, I mean, so ending the Fed is not even remotely sufficient. Is really the problem.
All right.
So, I mean, there may have been a time where that was the best thing we could do, the best we could hope for. But at this point, it's not so much a matter of ending that because you end up with the Hydra problem, right? You cut down this head to grow in its place. Whereas if you replace it completely with an economic system that has no censorship and is stable, I mean, so gold was a good money. It was a solid, hard money. And we now have money that is harder than that.
Okay. Yes, and I would still, diversify into gold and silver just in case.
Well, I mean, it seems to me that
nuclear winter, EMP, still want to get something.
Yeah, then there's no need for gold at that point.
What would you trade with?
Bullets.
Okay.
And the beauty of bullets is that you can trade either peacefully or not peacefully.
All right.
And if you have gold and I have bullets, soon I will have both gold and bullets.
What if I have bullets made of gold?
Ooh. Lone Ranger, eat your heart out.
No, you're thinking of bankers. The Lone Arranger.
Ah, nice.
I believe I have solved the aforementioned technicalities.
Ooh, does that mean we can introduce ourselves?
I believe it does.
All
yes.
right.
Would you like to introduce us?
I get to do that?
Sure.
All right. We have the Reverend, Lord, Doctor, etc., Captain, Kickass, Esquire, Buckshot, if you will.
Close enough.
Here.
And Richie Rich.
Present.
And who the hell are you?
Oh, I'm Peakless Mountaineer.
Oh, okay. Very good. We missed you last week, bro. We missed you last week.
Wild Stallions.
Wild Stallions.
Well, Free Talk Live Saturday show. But
All right.
good.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. It's, we can be both at the same time.
We are saving the world, so.
Or is the world
Wild
saving
Stallions.
us?
But clearly, I do not possess access to time travel devices, or I would be at last week's show.
But clearly. All right, so I want to talk about this first and foremost.
Do it.
From Cointelegraph.com, the IRS lists 4 crypto crimes amongst its top cases.
Crypto crimes.
In 2023, you'll never guess who's in the top 4.
Ian Freeman.
That's right.
Sam Bankman-Fried.
No, Ian Freeman.
Sam Bankman-Fried is not in the top 4?
Is library in there?
Let's find out.
Okay.
It's a short article, but the reason I'm bringing this up is because the founder of this radio program, the poster child for Bitcoin evangelicalism, is that a word?
Evangelism.
Whatever. I'm making up new words as I go.
Hey, as Don King said, if you can say it and I know what it means, it's a word.
Evangelicality.
Evangelitator. Whatever. Obviously one of the... I got into Bitcoin because of Free Talk Live and because of Ian Freeman and Mark Edge and all the other people on Free Talk Live talking about crypto and discussing it and giving their opinions on it and all that kind of stuff. Oh my God, did he get railroaded?
Oh, yeah.
Right? So, because here's a technology that there has never been any law written about ever.
Right.
And all of a sudden...
Until they started asking for it.
You like it. So
regulate
that
us,
means
please.
That this is a payment.
Yeah.
You're willing to do stuff for it, and that means that it's a payment, and that means all of our laws about payments. Yep. Can't be a religious thing, even though you religiously believe in it. It certainly can't just be, free speech, even though it was determined in an American court that code is speech.
Right.
Oh, no, see... money is only speech when it helps the establishment.
Well,
I mean, Hobby Lobby, that one pretty much solved that one for us.
Just to play
Hobby
devil's
Lobby?
advocate.
Yeah, when they determined that since money is speech and a corporation is a person, they have a right to put their money where they want to in terms of
okay. All right, I think I remember that now. Yeah, now that you mention it.
Just to play devil's advocate, they're not criminalizing all of Bitcoin, right, or cryptocurrency.
They are saying you cannot do this without a license. So yes, they are absolutely criminalizing all cryptocurrency.
Well, again,
saying that if you do
devil's
this,
advocate,
they are saying that if you trade using this, you are an unlicensed money transmitter.
I don't think that's what they're saying, because they're not stopping Coinbase from trading or any of the other
they have a
ones.
license.
Give it time.
Right, but even the peer-to-peer ones, right, weren't shut down for that reason. They weren't calling everyone on local Bitcoins a money transmitter, just when they hit a certain threshold.
They kind of are. They're only going after the ones who hit a certain monetary threshold.
Right.
You have to remember that the investigation on the Crypto 6 was over 6 years.
I mean, your argument is well, there was coke at a party I was at last week, so cocaine couldn't possibly be illegal. Well, they're going to go after the big guys.
No, I'm saying if they
way.
decriminalized marijuana, right, and you had small possessions of it, you were not a criminal.
Yep.
But if you were defrauding people of marijuana, right, and not selling them what you said you did,
you're like, man, here's a bag of weed.
right, that would be
That's
the fraud.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, that would be a violation of the non-aggression principle.
Understood.
All right, so IRS lists 4 crypto crimes amongst its top cases in 2023. The cases included investigations into the Silk Road marketplace, OneCoin, which isn't that the one where like the lady disappeared, nobody knows where she's at? The fraudulent like never really materialized, isn't that OneCoin?
I'll take your word for it.
See,
Okay.
and in that, what do we know? Does it give a background of that case?
I think it does. It's just listing the things right now. Investigations into the Silk Road marketplace, OneCoin, Oyster Protocol founder Bruno Block, and a money laundering scheme using Bitcoin kiosks is the sub-headline here. The Criminal Investigation Unit of the United States Internal Revenue Service, also known as IRS, or theirs, as I like to call them, has listed 4 crypto-related cases amongst the top 10 of its, quote, most prominent and high-profile investigations, unquote, in 2023. In a December 11th notice, the IRS, which also spells theirs, said there were 4 significant cases in 2023 involving the seizure of cryptocurrency, fraudulent practices, money laundering, and other schemes. Coming in at the 3rd most high-profile investigation in the past year was OneCoin founder Carl Sebastian Greenwood, who was sentenced to 20 years in prison in September for his role in marketing and selling a fraudulent crypto asset. So I believe that's the guy but like the lady disappeared.
Right, and that's kind of my point, right? It's not that it's a cryptocurrency; it's that it's being fraudulently sold.
Right, they basically were like, "Hey, everybody, buy into our cryptocurrency, but you don't actually get anything up front. We have to create it first, right?" Like they were taking people's money without giving them even so much as a token. Right. They couldn't even get anything in a wallet or anything like that.
I mean, they busted that medical chick, right, for promising medical research that she had no evidence to back up, and she defrauded people.
Right.
But we're not criminalizing the entire medical field.
Well, yet.
Well,
they're not. Yes.
They're not, sure.
Other cases included Ian Freeman, a New Hampshire resident sentenced to 8 years in prison for operating a money laundering scheme.
Right.
Using Bitcoin kiosks and failing to pay taxes from 2016 to 2019.
And again, just to play devil's advocate, we know that in that case, that is untrue. But that's what they're criminalizing.
Was he even charged with money laundering?
Like,
I don't remember that being on the list.
No, yeah, it was. Yeah,
that was a big one.
Was, yeah. Here's the thing about the Ian Freeman case is that it's so ludicrous and people are getting promoted because of it.
Okay.
Like that douchebag, what the hell's his name? Seth A-Frame.
Okay.
He got, or is getting some, I think they're going to make him a freaking judge.
Okay.
Right? This is the guy who like discombobulated, like when he's, the judge is asking him a question, he's like, I don't know, you're like, oh my God, like I can't, like if I'd have gone to school with him, we would have made fun of him because he's not smart, And then I'm trying to remember the broad's name. It'll come back to me at some point, but they've promoted her to like the cryptocurrency investigation task force or whatever. Like they're making her the quote crypto queen unquote within like the FBI or whatever, right? Like they're going to put her, she's the grand poobah of all cryptocurrency investigations now.
I mean, if she's incompetent, good.
Right.
That means not many other people are going to get caught.
This is part of why we win. I mean, they keep elevating these incompetent people to the position of going after people who are, being peaceful.
Yeah.
So at least we have incompetent people coming after us.
Now, I will say this is an overall thought, but it applies here.
Okay.
Right? When it comes to like the credibility of any source where you gather information, when they are wrong about something you have firsthand knowledge of, right, or expertise in, then you should call into question everything else that they have said that you don't have firsthand knowledge or expertise in, and just because you didn't have the information, right? Like they're wrong about Ian, and so maybe they're wrong about most other things, and occasionally get one right.
Yeah. Has it been a year since the trial?
Oh, I don't know. Well,
because I remember going and sitting, spectating, if you will, in the courtroom in the federal court in Concord, New Hampshire, and I just kept thinking to myself, man, this jury just wants to get the F out of here and go home for the holidays.
Could be then.
Like, it seems to me,
I think it's been a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Because, that's exactly what happened, too. The jury can't rush the trial, but
they can rush the deliberation.
Man, did they deliberate for nothing? You know what I mean? Like, we came in and the jury were given their instructions, and they had enough time to go get lunch at the taxpayer's expense, order in something or whatever, have a discussion, maybe a small one, and maybe time for coffee after lunch, and they're like, nope, guilty. There was reasonable doubt all over this thing, in my opinion.
Okay.
Right after hearing, and I was there for most of the days of the trial. I missed a couple, but I was there for most of them, and I had reasonable doubt, just even as a person trying to play devil's advocate. If I erase my my libertarian, my anarchist mind, and I'm a statist, and I'm sitting as a juror, I'm trying to be objective, I'm trying to take in all this evidence and quote judge it, unquote. Do I have a reasonable doubt as to whether or not he was guilty of the charges? Every charge I had reasonable doubt on.
Okay.
Because the prosecution had a bunch of hearsay, and their evidence was weak AF.
Well, now that it's basically over, right, up front, I really thought they were going to get him on the fraud charges. I thought a case could be made for fraud, and then those are the ones that they dropped.
Yeah.
I went, oh, that's interesting. I thought that was the money shot, when you talk about we told the banks that it was rare coins.
It's weird.
Yeah, that was the one where I'm like, you what?
Right.
Well, they are rare.
Come on.
Yeah.
There's only 21 million of them.
There is a sensory experience.
There's only 21 million of them.
That people
you can justify it if you want.
with the phrase rare coins. Now, I get that technically you could describe bitcoins as coins. No one does.
Coins in the name.
Okay. No one calls them that.
I call them Bitcoin all the time.
Yeah, Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Single word. It's not even hyphenated. So no one calls these things coins, but okay, fine.
And
you
even if
could
it were
technically do that, but that is not what people think of when you say the phrase rare coins.
Well, so that's a semantic, though.
It absolutely is a semantic.
Your argument is the same with
and
which,
that was the most damning thing that I heard
your
about this
argument
thing.
is the same with which the prosecution actually won the jury over, and that is by showing a wallet where when a transaction is made, the number goes up, and that means money was transmitted, unquote, which is not true. But that's what it appears to the common folk who don't understand the technology behind it.
Right.
Right? If you don't understand what Bitcoin is, you can't say whether or not it's rare.
I mean, really, this was the Dunning-Kruger effect. These people have so little knowledge of this thing that they believe themselves to have complete necessary knowledge of this thing.
Agreed.
Let's parallel this to the actual Liberty Dollar from back in the day. Do you remember this thing?
Bernard von Nothaus.
The Bernard von Nothaus Liberty Dollar.
Yes.
One of the reasons he got in trouble was because the method of which he tried to introduce his currency into circulation was deemed to be fraudulent.
Because he used the word dollar.
No, that wasn't it. It was the drop. He said, when you go out to spend this, right, you have this 1 ounce of silver. Spot value for the ounce itself was around $20.
Yep.
He stamped it at $50. And he said, when you go to a merchant, just have them open their hand and drop it into their hand. And then if they take it for $50 and give you change for $50, that's on them because they've accepted it. It wasn't that it said MSRP on it. It was the mechanism by which he tried to introduce it.
How does that apply to this?
Because the method of which he tried to introduce it was fraudulent by getting people to think they were getting an American coin, a $50 American coin, like minted by the United States, when it was a privately issued piece of silver, spot valued closer to 20.
Okay, I'm going to ask again. How does that apply to the Ian Freeman Crypto 6 case?
Because when you, as Pikla said, when you say rare coin, even if Bitcoin was hyphenated, it's a qualifier, right? This is not a coin. This is a Bitcoin. It is like a coin, but it's got this caveat to it that separates itself from actual coin. It's a Bitcoin. And it's a digital coin. It's bits as far as computer technology, bits and bytes and all that. It is not a real coin. That's why it's got a qualifier.
Yeah, I still don't buy it. Moving on.
I think that was the most damning part about it. Yeah. And they dropped that.
Right. And when they dropped it, that's like, oh, it's in the bag.
And even there, I get where you're coming from. There's an argument on both sides of that. That is gray area. That's fuzzy. And that to me
Which is probably why they dropped it, right? Because they didn't want to have that argument.
But gray area and fuzzy, right? It means you're trying to do something different. I also think in a transaction.
I also think they dropped that because they didn't want to have the argument as to whether or not code is free speech.
Okay. I don't care why they dropped it.
It's just me.
Hold on, I don't follow you there.
I'm speculating that they dropped that because they didn't want to have the argument that code is free speech. If they say that, Bitcoin is not coin, it's a fake coin or it's a virtual coin, then they have to define what Bitcoin is. In order to define what Bitcoin is, they have to say that it is code, it is software. And if the court ever says that Bitcoin is code, oh my gosh, all of the Bitcoin cases go out the window, can be retried, all that kind of thing. Because once they say that it is code, then we already know code is free speech.
Okay.
According to the U.S. government precedent.
Yeah, and then they have to either say they were wrong and Microsoft owes people a bunch of money, which I don't think they're going to say.
Right.
Or they have to, let these peaceful people go free.
And I'll go back to the part of the gray area and the fuzzy.
Yep.
You can't have gray area and fuzzy in the middle of a transaction, right? The contract itself, there has to be a meeting of the minds.
In the transaction, yes. I'm talking about in the court case.
I got it.
That the area is, fuzzy according to...
But when you put rare coin on a bank form that I'm in the business of trading rare coins.
And there's the issue too. So it wasn't the bank coming after him for, hey, you told us this was something other than it could be. And that's like, maybe there's an argument there. No, this was the federal government said, you didn't do the things that we tell everyone to do about these things over here. And we've decided that these things over here include this novel technology.
Yep. So, other cases included Ian Freeman, New Hampshire resident, sentenced to 8 years in prison for operating a money laundering scheme. Like there's two things there: money laundering, and then scheme. Right? I don't think he's guilty of either one or both of those combined, but they are again semantics. The government body was also behind an investigation of Oyster Protocol founder Amir El-Mani, known as Bruno Block, for tax evasion related to minting and selling Pearl tokens. 603-283-6160. We've got lots more Free Talk Live on the way.
Hi, I'm Montel Williams. Most of you know me as a talk show host, but I'm also an author, actor, single father of 4, a fitness writer, avid snowboarder, and I'm also a medical marijuana patient. Like many of the million people who are living with multiple sclerosis, I'm in pain every single day. And sometimes my nerves are so raw that if you brushed up against me in an elevator, I'd scream. I can't sleep at night from the pain, and sometimes the spasms in my legs are so intense they will wake me up throughout the night. I've tried the strongest prescription medications available, and I'm going to tell you, they do not work. In fact, they leave me in a stupor, and most of the time, it's impossible to even live your life. Now, I've tried medical marijuana, and I'm going to tell you something, it works. If you'd like more information about medical marijuana, you can contact the Marijuana Policy Project at mpp.org or call 1-877-JOIN-MPP.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Hire with a roundup of the biggest headlines from this past week, a week which ended with Hungary blocking a €55 billion or $55 billion aid package for Ukraine, just hours after an agreement was reached for Kiev to start accession talks with the bloc. Hungary maintains close relations with Russia. EU leaders say Ukraine will not be left without support. The war-torn nation's critically dependent on European and American backing as it continues to fight occupying Russian forces. US President Joe Biden insists failing to provide additional aid to Ukraine would be the greatest Christmas gift to Russia's leader Vladimir Putin. In a meeting on Tuesday at the White House with his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky, Mr. Biden urged lawmakers to pass the supplementary funding. But with a 3-week recess looming, the hopes of Congress reaching a deal by the end of the year remain in the balance. Also on Capitol Hill, the House of Representatives has voted to formally open an impeachment inquiry into President Biden, accusing him and his family of corruption. Ira Spitzer has the details.
On this vote, the yeas are 221 and the nays are 212. The resolution is adopted.
The inquiry against President Biden will give them more power to gather evidence ahead of a possible impeachment attempt early next year. Republicans have long alleged corruption in the Biden administration, much of it centered around the president's son Hunter Biden's business dealings, although they have yet to present any conclusive evidence of wrongdoing. Biden said Republicans were wasting time on what he called a baseless political stunt.
As Israel continues with its bombardment of Gaza, there are growing rifts between the government there and the administration stateside, with Joe Biden criticizing Israel for what he calls its indiscriminate bombing, which he fears is losing the country international support. US intelligence suggests nearly half of the Israeli munitions dropped on Gaza are what's known as dumb bombs, in other words, unguided and therefore potentially imprecise. Mr. Biden hit out at what he labels the most conservative government in Israel's history, condemning it for seemingly not wanting a two-state solution. This whilst the United Nations General Assembly voted in favour of a draft resolution urging an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. More than 3/4 of the 193-member General Assembly backed the move, which was vetoed by the United States in the Security Council. Here's Jody Jacobs from the UN headquarters in New York.
Before the vote, both the United States and Austria tried to push for amendments to the text, which it says did not condemn Hamas, but this failed. Egypt, who tabled the resolution, told the General Assembly that the resolution is a very simple, clear and explicit one, saying the killings need to stop. Resolutions by the General Assembly are not legally binding, but they do carry immense moral weight.
And representatives from 198 nations have agreed on a climate deal at the COP28 summit in Dubai. The text calls on all countries to transition away from the use of fossil fuels, but not to phase them out. And that's your week in review.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
What kind of a radio program might you be listening to right now?
The free kind.
The live kind. And the live kind. That's right. It's Free Talk Live. We are a live call-in radio program where you can call in and talk about whatever is on your mind.
But you got to call. Please call.
603-283-6160. That's the number that you should, tattoo on your firstborn's forehead or whatever it is. Put on, it'd be cool if you put it on one of those like bug guards. You know how like when you're driving down the road and an ambulance is behind you and they write it backwards?
Yeah.
So that you can read it forward in your rearview mirror? If somebody put like Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160 on one of those, that'd be cool.
There was a website called like leftlanedrivers.com and they sold those, but it said move over with an arrow pointing to the right. And being the cheapskate that I am, I just printed out something backwards at work that said move over. I taped it up there.
Nice. Well done. Yeah. With a little bit of ingenuity, a lot of things can be accomplished for a small budget.
Yeah.
It's true.
But it was just cool. I'm in the left lane, you move over.
One of my pet peeves, of course, is somebody who's in the furthest left-hand lane with their left turn signal on.
Okay.
Like they can't go
Almost wish they would.
Can't go any further left, but man, they got that signal on and they're driving slow. Like if they're going fast in the left lane with the left signal on, I don't care.
Yep.
Right? As long as they're going faster than, well, everybody in the right-hand lane, you know. But if they're in the furthest left-hand lane and they're going slow with the left signal on, oh, God, that's annoying. I just, my road rage starts bubbling.
I had a coworker that said, like, if I'm in the left lane, I'm doing 85 and I'm not moving out of the left lane. I'm like, well, you're a jerk because I might want to be doing 90 and now you're obstructing traffic. Just move over.
Yeah, if somebody
I don't care how fast you're going, just don't be in the left lane unless you're passing.
Yeah, if somebody suddenly comes up behind you, you're in the left lane, you think you're going faster than anybody, somebody, all of a sudden you look in the rearview mirror, there's somebody right behind you on your tail. GTF over, man.
Yeah, just move on.
Like, let them pass. That's what the left lane is for.
Don't block traffic by being this wall of car that no one can get past.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to go the same speed as the people in the right lane, be in the right lane.
It's embarrassing that we have to talk about this on Freeman.
And that's why that thing is cool. It says move over, because then they check their mirror and they're like, oh, I'm not as cool as I thought I was.
My 85 is clearly insufficient.
It is. It absolutely is.
We've been talking about this article from Cointelegraph.com. The IRS lists 4 crypto crimes amongst its top cases in 2023. And, of course, one of them is the founder of this show, Ian Freeman, who is currently in Merrimack County Jail right now. He's awaiting something that resembles
a restitution hearing.
A restitution hearing from the federal government, which is basically the government going to determine how much money Ian Freeman owes to no victims.
Okay. Can we talk about that for a minute?
What?
Well, the restitution hearing.
Okay.
Because during the last hearing, right, he offered to pay the fine to the quote-unquote victims.
Yes.
And I don't know if that was, like, strategically wise before a restitution hearing is coming up. Right? Because it's almost admitting that there are victims who should be compensated.
What he was saying there is consistent with his principles, in my opinion. What he was saying there was, look, I will pay money to make anybody who may have been harmed, even though he had no part in their harm. But I want that money to not go to you, government. I want that money to go to people.
Okay.
Right? To if somebody was victimized, if somebody did lose their money because of some romance scammer who talked them out of their savings and convinced them to buy Bitcoin in order to do it, that he would rather his money go to that person than his money go to the government, to the federal government.
All right.
It's my understanding of why he made that statement.
I get the why.
Yeah, I'm with him there.
Strategically.
No, I'm completely with him on this one.
Okay.
Like, okay, I have to pay money.
Could I not pay money? Right.
Could I not pay money to a kidnapping murderer? That would be great.
Got it.
Yeah.
I got it. But he's got a restitution hearing coming up, and he's already offered money. He's already offered to pay money to those whom he has not harmed.
I don't recall the order in which these things happened. If he said something like, if there is to be a fine, I would like the money to go directly to, victim X, Y, and Z. Or if they said, hey, there's going to be a restitution hearing. And then, I think he said it before, what's the word? Anticipating a possible monetary penalty.
Okay.
And then they were like, oh, no, we're going to have a hearing about that later. Okay. And so that's kind of where we're at now. We're waiting for that to unfold, I believe.
All right.
If I recall events correctly in the correct order. So if you
even if you are correct, right? It may not have been the wisest thing retrospectively.
How so?
Well, I already made my case because the restitution hearing is coming afterwards, and he's already agreed to pay money to those whom he has not harmed.
He hasn't agreed. He offered.
Well, offer, agree, whatever.
I don't know that those are the same thing in the eyes of the law.
Okay.
Or not.
Well, now we're semantics again.
Oh, of course, but that's what court is, right? Court is a whole bunch of semantics.
Okay. So he already offered to pay money to people whom he has not harmed before they're about to decide how much money he owes to people who he has not harmed.
I don't know that that's true. I think what he said, and I'm paraphrasing because nothing was recorded except by the court here.
Got it.
So I'm going off memory.
If I'm going to pay a fine, I'd rather it go to the people
he
who lost
said,
money.
If there is to be a fine, whatever that is, I would prefer it go directly to the end
he
people.
Didn't offer. He didn't agree. He stipulated a preference.
Yes.
Okay, so let's work backwards again.
Okay.
If we're going to go all semantic all the way back.
Let's do it.
He stipulated a preference to pay money to those whom he has not victimized before being told how much he has to pay money to those whom he has not victimized. I don't care what word you use.
Okay, what
the logic, it's the same idea.
You are correct, in fact, but in my opinion of what he said was, if you're going to take my money,
yes,
right,
they're going to take his money.
If I can have some say in it, I'd like to.
Right.
And I would like it to not go to you.
I got it.
I want it to go to these people.
Understood. And whether or not he knew that there was going to be a restitution hearing to follow that, right? The fact that there is now a restitution hearing to follow that is bad optics for his claim that he victimized no one.
Of course, yeah. I mean, the court is going to do everything they possibly can to give this thing horrible optics all across the board.
Yeah, I got it.
Because it's one of their top 4 cases, apparently.
Right. And again, this is personal experience now on a much smaller scale, right? Like I paid a fine to the food bank in Hawaii for some nonsense.
Really?
Yeah. But it was like...
Okay, what kind of nonsense?
I don't remember. It was some reckless driving or some traffic, whatever.
So
speeding.
How did you end up paying money to the food bank? Did you stipulate that?
Yes.
Okay. So you went to some sort of a court thing, and they were like, "We want you to pay $100," and you were like, "Well, I'll give $100 to this food bank over here," and they were like, "Sure."
Sort of.
Okay.
But it they finally agreed to the payment to the food bank the day I was turning myself in to go to jail for a month.
Okay.
Right. I said it's not about the money. If you don't want me to have this money, I have more than enough in my backpack.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I've got the fine you want in my backpack. I am not going to give it to you.
Mm.
So if you want to put me in jail for 30 days, that's fine. But I have offered, and maybe my attorney wasn't clear with the offer, the public defender.
Yep.
Right. I will give this to the charity of your choice. And that day, the judge went, oh, in that case, go make a donation to the food bank, come back in 2 weeks with your receipt, and then that'll settle this.
All right. So the other portion of this sentence is operating a money laundering scheme using Bitcoin kiosks.
Yep.
Which, no, that's false, right? What he was convicted of was not money laundering using kiosks. He was convicted of money laundering using a website known as, I think, localbitcoins.com. And that was like the kiosks were never shown to be fraudulent.
Well, they collected them as evidence.
They did, but they were never shown as the kiosks themselves.
Don't you understand? This is a sophisticated cyber criminal. Right. All of the things that he was doing was not part of the scheme.
But that's not the second part. The second part of this is failing to pay taxes from 2016 to 2019. Now, when the IRS brought their witnesses and did their tabulation of this is the money that he brought in, and this is the transactions that we tracked via localbitcoins.com, and here's a spreadsheet with all the transactions, the amount of money and the percentage, and he charged some percent above whatever the transaction cost was, and that's his quote profit margin unquote, that he therefore made X amount of dollars per year over this course of 2016?
6 years.
16, 17, 18, 4 years.
Okay.
This 4-year period. And the defense, of course, was like, okay, so, you've done very well by putting together this spreadsheet and putting together these numbers of, the amounts in dollars of these transactions that happened. But isn't it possible that Ian Freeman owed no taxes at all? And the answer to that was yes. It is possible. Yep. So they presented a whole bunch of evidence to say to tell the jury that this guy didn't pay taxes and is therefore a tax evader, but they never proved it because the people they put on the stand themselves said, Oh, it's totally possible he didn't know anything.
Yeah. Well, and that's why you would file a return.
Yeah. And, well, so that is, to my mind, a perfect example of why it is astonishing that they didn't deliberate on this and that there was no room for doubt. Like, we're talking about taxes. I mean, it is so complicated that people can't do it. It is so complicated that people whose job to do that frequently screw it up. So the fact that we have someone in court saying, oh, it's entirely possible you didn't owe any taxes at all.
Right.
I mean, right there, that is at least doubt.
Very reasonable.
Yeah.
I might add. Right. If you're going to look for things that might be construed as reasonable doubt, the IRS themselves going, yes, it's possible he didn't owe any taxes at all.
Well, and then if they move on that, then you just downgrade the charge to willful failure to file, right? And then you just string them up on that one.
Well, that sounds like a lower sentence, at least.
It's a totally different charge.
Totally different charge.
And one that they didn't even, it wasn't even mentioned.
Well, because they got him on the tax evasion. Right? You don't negotiate the lower until you got a no on the higher.
Yeah. Let's get this one out of the way. It's Skeeter calling. I'm sure he wants to talk to Richie Rich, but maybe not.
Because I'm your boy.
Let's find out.
Yeah.
I figured out why he's your boy.
What's going on, ya boy?
Because that makes him Skeeter.
It's your boy.
Oh,
it's a boy.
He's definitely the bottom to my top.
He is a Skeeter.
It's your boy Skeeter Claus, and I'm bringing an early Christmas to Free Talk Live in the form of a $2,350 value gift to all Free Talk Live hosts. To show my
Somehow
support.
I doubt that.
Yeah.
It's his overvalued book that he's writing.
It's an open offer to all Free Talk Live hosts. I'm paying for your filing fees for renunciation of citizenship.
Oh.
So you guys go be free
you know what? I remember this. I remember this now. Your last call that I took was you asking, if you don't like it, why don't you leave? And I thought to myself, that's exactly what we're trying to do here in New Hampshire. I did leave, actually. I left every other state that I've ever lived in to come to New Hampshire so that we can attempt to leave the freaking union.
You're stealing collective property. So if you join a collective if you join a collective,
hold on. By collective, you mean be born?
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure that's what you meant. If you join the collective, and by join the collective, I mean exist.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to give Skeeter props if he's actually going to put his money where his mouth is. Right? There's something commendable to that.
Hey, I'm down.
Sure, it's a real open offer. I will pay if you prove that you're going to renounce citizenship.
When you say you're down, Peakless, you're ready to renounce your citizenship?
Waters.
Yeah, sure. Let's do this.
All right. Peakless has accepted your offer.
I'm down. Let's do it.
Easy. Okay.
I mean, I don't have the slightest faith that you will follow through, but
I guarantee you I will.
Put it in escrow.
Wherever you go, you cannot complain about taxes. You cannot complain that it's
no. See, now there's all sorts of caveats attached to it. You should lead with the caveats before you make the offer.
No, it's not a caveat.
It's not caveats.
So
if I take your money to renounce my citizenship, wherever I go, I can't complain about taxes. What if I end up in a place that has high taxes?
It's a logical consequence. Once you leave the U.S., you have to choose where you want to go. And when you choose, just like all immigrants, taxation is not theft.
Skeeter?
So for all immigrants, even in the U.S., who chose to come here,
I have one question.
Is not theft. Can you agree with that?
No. I have one question for you.
No.
Where can I go on planet Earth that is not ruled by a government?
Wait, you can't ask a question when you didn't answer mine.
Sure, I can.
I'm the host of this show. They said no.
When immigrants come here and agree to all the rules, is taxation theft for them?
Yes.
You guys are delusional.
Okay.
Well, depends how the immigrant got here.
If I put a knife to your throat and tell you can either hand me your wallet or I'm going to draw this blade across your... Let me finish the question. If I do that and then you hand me your wallet... You haven't chosen to hand me your wallet. You've just chosen between the two. both of them violations of the non-aggression principle. I would rather be stolen from than killed.
What if you had Pickus? Hold on, Skeeter. Pickus, what if you had the choice?
Why can't I address what he's saying?
Oh, hold on.
Because I want to address what he's saying.
I put him on hold again.
What if you had the choice between walking down like a well-lit road with plenty of people around you, or the dark alley in complete darkness? And you chose the dark alley and then got mugged with the knife.
Then I chose the dark alley, but I did not choose to get mugged.
Okay.
All right. So, Skater, here's the thing. Slaves,
here we go.
Slaves, no matter what plantation they live on, may look across the way and go, "Oh my gosh, those slaves have it better than me," and they will choose. They will choose. Oh my God, dude! Holy crap! Put him on hold again.
All right.
They will choose, like the grass is always greener on the other plantation, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right? So, just because a slave of a certain plantation wants to escape their slavery and move to a plantation with slightly less slavery doesn't make them any less a slave.
Yeah, and if a slave goes, they don't beat their slaves as much on that plantation, and somehow they work it out that they get to go to that plantation instead, they haven't willingly given up their sovereignty as a human being. They haven't chosen to be a slave.
So, Skeeter, I decline your offer of payment for me to move to another slave plantation because I don't want to be a freaking slave at all.
I can only make one at a time.
I'm sorry, what?
Okay, so the logical flaw in that is that slavers are not responsible for the other plantations. If there are zombies outside of my house and you're like, you were born in my house, I am not obligated to keep you there just because there's zombies or other slavers or whatever harming you outside my house. Other slavers are not responsible for other slavers. So if you choose to leave the house, you can either choose to stay or leave the house.
But you're offering to pay for us to leave the house.
Yeah, I think that's commendable.
Yes.
But I am saying no, I refuse your money because I don't want to be a slave at all.
Well, you don't have to be so angry about it. Just refuse his money.
You put me on hold. Let me talk, man. That is a very nominal fee. It's basically free. It's only $2,350 for a filing fee, and then there's no exit taxes after that because you're worth.
That's like 1 month's rent for a studio apartment.
I already debunked that with Ian. Would you stop interrupting me?
No, I won't.
And when.
How dare you give him a taste of his own medicine?
You guys don't give opposing sides fair time.
Oh my God, we've given you so much freaking time, dude. I'm done. Done. DUNN.
I wanted to hear him address Peakless's point.
Yeah.
Which point?
He'll call back next week.
The getting mugged in the alley.
Oh, that. Yeah. Now, you can certainly say it's unwise, and that's fair.
Yeah.
But just because I made an unwise decision doesn't mean that I gave someone permission to stab me or to mug me or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I get it. That's why I asked it. But if you were born in the alley, right, and you were getting mugged every day, and you went, man, that street looks nice. Right, and you went out onto the nicer lit street and then still got mugged.
You didn't choose to get mugged there either. You just chose to be in a less likely to get mugged, but still got mugged.
Right.
If you're not Skeeter and you want to opine on any of this, 603-283-6160.
Now, while we've got a moment, though, I would like to say that, I'd like to ask you a question.
Sure.
Do words exist?
Ooh.
Yes, words exist.
Then rights exist.
Okay.
Wait, what is exist?
Well, and so that's kind of the tricky question here. So
Right.
I wanted to make sure off the bat, okay, we can call it something existing if like there is a useful tool that operates by our agreement.
Like
yeah.
That's like asking, does math exist?
It's a little trickier than that.
Well, so
math has like its own existence inconsistency that is actually the foundation of all atomic physics.
I'm thinking of what is similar between math and words, like vocabulary.
Language, yeah.
Right? They're both human constructs.
Yeah, so it kind of depends on what you mean by math. Like, if by math you mean the relationship between things, that is not a thing we make. But if you mean the way that we talk about it, then yeah, that's a social construct.
I'm just getting more at the human construct piece of, like, words exist in that, like, you can write them down on paper And if you've been taught how to read them, you can decipher them, and you can, like I'm doing live reads, again, that kind of a thing.
Like the words, right? Words exist theoretically as a useful tool for dialect,
right?
But
for communication.
I said that about rights. I said they're a useful language tool so we all know what we're talking about,
right?
But they don't exist.
So rights actually number one, they do exist in the same way that words exist. Now, number two, what they allow is peace.
The concept of rights is not what allows peace. The defense of life, liberty, and property is what allows peace.
Well, no, the respect of rights is what allows there to be peace between us. Like, I respect your bodily autonomy, and you know that.
Yeah.
Which is why you don't have to think to yourself, "Oh, is Peakless going to stab me today?"
I got it, but it's not because I have a right to life. It's because I have the life, and you respect that I have the life,
which is your right.
It's not because it can be taken and attenuated at any time.
Yes, it can be.
Yes.
Rights can be violated. That doesn't make them not real.
Well, it makes them not
words
rights.
Can tell you a lie. That doesn't make them not real.
Right. But with the conceptualization of rights, though, they ought not be attenuated because that removes the ability for them to be a right. I'm
sorry, you're going to have to say that in a different way.
The biggest problem people have with the Bill of Rights, specifically the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, is there's a claim that we have a right to free speech, and then they attenuate it. And then they say we have a right to bear arms, and then they attenuate it.
What do you mean attenuate?
They diminish the right. They put caveats on it. They put limitations on it. You don't have an absolute right to free speech. You don't have an absolute right to bear arms.
Well, I do have an absolute right to property. And that includes bearing arms. That includes free speech.
You don't, because they will take it.
And that would be not right. That is a violation of the rights. That doesn't mean the rights aren't there. It means they're being violated.
Rights are inviolable.
Inviolable, right.
Yeah.
That's what doesn't exist. Inviolable rights do not exist.
Okay.
But rights do exist as a useful social contract or
libertarian with the social
construct.
Okay.
What the hell's going on?
Yeah. A useful social construct that we can use to keep peace.
Yeah, I get it. And same with words. It's a useful social construct, so we all know what we're talking about.
Right.
And we know that not everything is described the same way.
And you can violate those words by telling lies.
But there's also dozens of languages with different words for the same object.
603-283-6160. More Free Talk Live is coming up. Hour number 2 is next, including Is the American Dream Dead?
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing. To be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya with a roundup of the biggest headlines from this past week, a week which ended with Hungary blocking a €55 billion or $55 billion aid package for Ukraine, just hours after an agreement was reached for Kiev to start accession talks with the bloc. Hungary maintains close relations with Russia. Pablo Gutierrez reports from Budapest.
Prime Minister Viktor Orban vowed to oppose Ukraine's EU membership in the future. Orban, during his weekly radio address, said Hungary faced economic difficulties in 2023, but dealt with them on its own. He also expressed his reasoning for his veto on the EU's plan to give €50 billion in aid to Ukraine, saying it could negatively affect Hungary.
EU leaders say Ukraine will not be left without support. The war-torn nation's critically dependent on European and American backing as it continues to fight occupying Russian forces. US President Joe Biden insists failing to provide additional aid to Ukraine would be the greatest Christmas gift to Russia's leader Vladimir Putin. In a meeting on Tuesday at the White House with his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky, Mr. Biden urged lawmakers to pass the supplementary funding. But with a 3-week recess looming, the hopes of Congress reaching a deal by the end of the year remain in the balance. Also on Capitol Hill, the House of Representatives has voted to formally open an impeachment inquiry into President Biden, accusing him and his family of corruption. Ira Spitzer has the details.
On this vote, the yeas are 221 and the nays are 212. The resolution is adopted.
All 221 House Republicans voted to move forward with the impeachment inquiry, while all 212 Democrats were in opposition. The inquiry against President Biden will give them more power to gather evidence ahead of a possible impeachment attempt early next year. Republicans have long alleged corruption in the Biden administration, much of it centered around the president's son Hunter Biden's business dealings, although they have yet to present any conclusive evidence of wrongdoing. In a statement, Biden said Republicans were wasting time on what he called a baseless political stunt.
As Israel continues with its bombardment of Gaza, there are growing rifts between the government there and the administration's stateside, with Joe Biden criticizing Israel for what he calls its indiscriminate bombing, which he fears is losing the country international support. US intelligence suggests nearly half of the Israeli munitions dropped on Gaza are what's known as dumb bombs, in other words, unguided and therefore potentially imprecise. Mr. Biden hit out at what he labels the most conservative government in Israel's history, condemning it for seemingly not wanting a two-state solution. This whilst the United Nations General Assembly voted in favour of a draft resolution urging an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. More than 3/4 of the 193-member General Assembly backed the move, which was vetoed by the United States in the Security Council. Here's Jody Jacobs from the UN headquarters in New York.
153 member states have voted in favor of the resolution, calling for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, demanding that all parties comply with their obligations under international law and the unconditional release of all hostages. But before the vote, both the United States and Austria tried to push for amendments to the text, which it says did not condemn Hamas, but this failed. Egypt, who tabled the resolution, told the General Assembly that the resolution is a very simple, clear and explicit one and is long overdue, saying the killings need to stop. Resolutions by the General Assembly are not legally binding, but they do carry immense moral weight. The world has spoken, says one diplomat here in New York, but we'll have to wait and see whether either side in this Middle East conflict adheres to this resolution.
The UK government has won a crucial vote on a controversial plan to send some asylum seekers to Rwanda to have their claims processed there. The new legislation is designed to address concerns raised by the country's Supreme Court in a ruling last month, which declared the plan unlawful. Ollie Barrett's been following from London.
If Prime Minister Rishi Sunak had lost this vote in the UK's Parliament, it would have led to questions about the future of his leadership of the Conservative Party. But this victory is not the end of the story in a party which is divided on the issue. Some Conservative lawmakers hope to toughen the legislation as it makes its way through Parliament in the coming months. Others say if the plan is toughened any further, it could breach international law and they would withdraw their support. The bill, voted on by lawmakers, seeks to declare Rwanda a safe country country to send asylum seekers to and to reduce the likelihood of legal challenges. The opposition Labour Party says the plan is a gimmick and it would scrap it if it wins the next election.
And representatives from 198 nations have agreed on a climate deal at the COP28 summit in Dubai. The text calls on all countries to transition away from the use of fossil fuels, but not to phase them out. And that's your week in review.
We turn to Washington, D.C., where America's roommates are holding a rally as part of their new One Vote Doesn't Matter political action campaign. The rally, which drew thousands of roommates, ranging from the guy who keeps all of his groceries in his room to the guy whose name the lease is under, is just a part of a surging grassroots movement to spread the message that one person's vote can't make a difference if you really, really think about it.
You know, this is like the most important election of our lifetime. We just want to get the word out that it's already been decided in some smoke-filled boardroom. You know, I pretty much minored in poli-sci, so I think I get this stuff.
Joining us now is Jason Copeland at a rally in the nation's capital. Jason, how would you describe the energy there?
Yeah, hi, Andrea. I'd say it's a definite chill vibe. I just saw the roommate whose only friend seems to be his younger brother and the guy who just has an air mattress in his room passing out flyers together. Now, the roommates do make some interesting points. The Electoral College it is weird.
This is the Onion News Network.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
My God, what have I done? I've created a monster. I have set these three people on the same radio program at the same time.
To get into the semantics of linguistics.
Oh, yeah, don't you know they're, hey, getting all Wisconsin
What's a
on
hey
you.
dare hey? Hey, Mark, I think I know why the list, the downloads are going down.
Yeah.
Get in the weeds about semantics.
It is Free Talk Live. You can call 603-283-6160 if you'd like to join us tonight. In the studio, it's
Peakless Mountaineer,
Richie Rich,
and I am your host, the Reverend Captain Kickass. You can join, well, me. Are you going? Forkfest?
Oh, yeah.
You're not. You can join myself and Peakless.
I'm going to play Yahtzee instead.
And you can do that at Forkfest.
Okay.
And other liberty-minded.
So there's a tent for that.
Hey, I'm trying to do a live read here. Hush. You can join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 13th through the 16th for the 8th annual Forkfest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Forkfest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which has sold out in recent years. Forkfest happens the weekend before the Porcupine Freedom Festival. It is decentralized, which means there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 13th through the 16th. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, and even the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 13th through the 16th.
And my favorite part, no metal detectors and no gun-free zones.
Well, there will be one metal detector.
What?
Yeah, that's me.
Oh. Is it one of those like ground metal detectors?
No, that's just me, like, people watching. And if
he has a sixth sense for the metal.
Right. Yes. And so
it's kind of like science versus the science.
Okay.
He has a sense for the metal.
Imagine a goth detector.
Okay.
Right? I am the metal equivalent of the goth. So if somebody's there judging whether or not somebody's goth, I'll be there just judging whether or not people are metal.
Got it.
And I don't even care if they are or not. You don't have to be or not be. Like, it doesn't matter to me whether you're metal or not.
You're going to have a clicker counter,
but
one metal.
I'll be like, yeah, that guy looks pretty metal. Yeah, no, not metal. I have to, subtract one somehow. Right?
Can you do that with the clicker thing? Does it go back?
What about workplace accidents, deaths, dismembership? Is that metal? Well, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know all that was metal.
Also, the answer to your question about the clicker thing is yes. You've seen these pens with the 4 different colored inks?
Yes.
You just have to press the right button to subtract versus add. So
I've never had the opportunity to handle one of those counter clickers.
One of the counters will just count how many clicks, regardless of to whether or not it was plus or minus, right?
Okay.
Assuming plus is yes metal and minus is not metal, right? So one will count the overall clicks that you've made, and then the other two will count, metal versus not metal. So then at the end of the day or, week or 2 weeks or whatever it is.
You could have a ratio of metal to non-metal at the same time.
That's right.
What do the other colors do? There's 4 colors on that.
Well, that's the pen.
Yeah, but not on the counter. Yeah. On the clicker, there's only 3.
Oh.
Right. But I was just using some other mechanical device as a, descriptor.
Look at that baby over
For
there.
your clicker and counter clicker.
Totally not metal. Then he poops his diaper and runs across the field and is like, dope, totally metal.
If he's flinging it, that might be metal.
All right.
Or if he starts a spontaneous mosh pit with other babies, right, that would be totally metal. So 603-283-6160 if you want to join us. Did we say who we are? I think we did.
I think so.
If not, he's Peakless, that's Richie, and I'm the captain.
Wild Stallions.
Man, George Carlin as Rufus, like there's only one other acting role I enjoyed him as much as Rufus.
Mr. Conductor?
No. Cardinal Glick.
Oh, okay.
From Dogma.
Yep.
You know, I'm kind of glad that I never got to see him be either not on the left or have no sense of humor. Because those are your only options presently.
I feel like he leaned left.
Little?
At the same time, though, the older he got, the more anarchist he became. All right. That is to say that he stopped leaning left and began leaning right into anarchism, straight into it, right? Like, I have very few rules, but one of the rules that I do have is I don't trust anything the government tells me.
Yeah.
In fact, if the government tells me it's a good idea to put on a hat, I'm not putting on a hat.
Well, and
that's
there's
why
a big
the
club.
coronavirus spread so wide.
Yeah.
Because you anarchists wouldn't wear your face diaper.
That was the problem.
It's a big club.
And you ain't in it. And incidentally, the same club they used to beat you over the head with.
That's right.
Yeah, no, that is about as anarchist a statement as one can make.
Yeah, and, here in New Hampshire, part of his ashes were scattered out in Spofford, which is near here. It's like a 5-minute drive from New Hampshire. Apparently, he went to some sort of a summer camp for several years in a row out in Spofford.
All right.
And one of his dying wishes was for some of his ashes to be scattered in the Spofford area, Spofford Lake.
All right.
And so that's what happened, apparently, according to his people and his, publications and that kind of a thing. So he is from New York, of course, right? But he spent time up here in the Shire and was very fond of it. So much so fond that he wanted some of his ashes scattered here.
Nice.
So I appreciate that.
All right.
It's not why I moved here.
I'd make a trip, but that seems like a weird move when he was an atheist.
I'd do it because, I also claimed atheist for quite some time. I claim agnostic at this point. Not because I've really changed my perspective on religion.
Well, you can be an agnostic atheist.
But I just, it occurred to me that I don't know everything, right? And so I can't say factually, despite the overwhelming non-evidence that exists, right? I can't say factually that, it's that I understand the world so much that I can say there is nothing that exists outside of my understanding. That would be dumb.
Right.
Right. And so I've looked within myself and gone, are there things that I don't understand? Yep. All the time. First of all, I barely understand how other people act most of the time.
With the atheist question, though, you don't carry the burden of proof.
Well, that's true.
You don't have to prove there is no God.
Well, if you were going to be a Gnostic atheist, which is what the famous one tends to be, is a Gnostic atheist. They are certain that there is no God. And they really want everyone else to know that there is no God and to agree with them about the absence of God. So that's a Gnostic atheist. And if you're going to be one of those, I'm sorry, at that point, you are shifting the burden of proof onto you. You have to disprove God at that point, which is kind of tough.
It's as impossible as the burden to prove God.
Right.
So it's irrelevant.
And
both
and
are
on the other side of
impossible
things,
to prove.
On the other side of things,
the burden is on the positive. The burden is always on the positive claim.
Yeah, well, on the other side of things, you've got the Gnostic and agnostic theist. And most theists are Gnostic theists. They are certain, beyond a shadow of a doubt,
I know what
that there's a
agnostic
God.
is. What's Gnostic?
Gnostic means you know. So if you're a Gnostic theist, you are certain. Like, those are the kind that are like, you better do this or you're going to hell, I know for sure.
Right.
Whereas there are some people who they believe in God, but they're still open to being wrong.
Yeah, well, no, they're not. Because you can't prove them wrong. It's impossible to prove them wrong.
As far as we know.
Well, this is the weird thing, right? As far as we know, it's impossible to prove them wrong. And to prove them wrong, you would use the same scientific methodology that they would need to prove themselves right.
Right.
So
and as far as we know, there's no way to prove or disprove the thing.
Well, there's plenty of ways to prove it. They've been unsuccessful in doing so. Show me God. That's it. Like if a alien being came down and demonstrated his ability to create things out of nothing, right? And like, I'm going to create human, and then he just magically manifests a human being. Now you have evidence that being itself has godlike traits.
Sure.
Right.
But that doesn't prove that that's God, though.
It's not. Well,
I mean, it could very easily just be a human being with really advanced technology.
Well, maybe.
I mean, I'm still convinced.
Any technology advanced enough looks like magic.
I'm still convinced that religions, plural, took the idea of a being that is beyond our understanding and used it to create an environment of fear in order to control them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is why why I originally claimed atheism, because I'm like, I want no part of these organizations that do nothing but create fear to control people. And then I discovered that this did not apply just to religions as I knew them at the time, that this thought also applied to another organization called government.
Yep.
Because it operates in the exact same way a religion does. It's got all the pageantry, it's got all the fear, it's got all the fire and brimstone and all that kind of stuff. And so I was like, And then, like, I lived through the creation of, like, Scientology, right? Like, I'm older than Scientology. I saw that come from wherever the hell it came from, right? L. Ron Hubbard, sat in the cupboard.
The science fiction writer.
Yeah. And, like, I've read some of his sci-fi stuff, like, okay, sure.
Even if he's a mediocre sci-fi writer, it was well played into the religious aspect of Thetans coming out of volcanoes and take over your body on Earth.
And so looking at all of that and then also applying that and how it applies to government, how people think and feel and act with government, I'm like, it's the same damn thing, except for, like, religions, if you don't like the one you're in, for the most part, you can opt out. Right? You can go, I don't want to be a part of your religion anymore. I'm going to go over here and be a part of this religion. Or I'm going to be a part of no religion whatsoever and let my spiritual experience be with me and whomever, right?
Well, and that's why, based on Peakless's definition, I would probably fall into the category of, like, Gnostic atheist, right? Like, I have not seen sufficient evidence to change my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't need to provide any of my own, mostly because I'm not militant about it. Right. If you need religion or whatever it is to, like, be a good person and do the right thing, well, then I'm glad you have it.
Right.
I'm not spending my time to convince you otherwise.
Yeah.
Until you morph that into, like, the use of the state to attempt to change my behavior.
Right.
And then we got problems.
Right. And that's where I really do have a problem with religion, is the fact that religion was the first government.
Yep.
Right. Like, you go back in history, before the institution known as government existed, it was religion.
No, I gotta call you on that one. No, I think that government predates religion.
I don't think so.
Well, so
Magic rectangle.
Okay, well, no. I mean, let's just think about this. Let's run a thought experiment. So, if I hit you and I take your stuff, I'm governing you. I mean, that's a tax. It's the same thing. Now, if I do this over and over again, and eventually you realize he has the power to overpower me, and you just like give me your stuff so that I don't have to hit you, I mean, that is exactly government. Now, that, as a dynamic, is simpler than religion. And since it's simpler, it's probably something that emerged earlier. Like, you can find that behavior in chimpanzees. And as far as I know, you can't find religious behavior in chimpanzees.
I think, once again, you're getting into the semantics of it. And if it was organized religion versus organized government, things would be different. Right? Because governance generally starts at the family level. Right? The first person that hits you is probably a parent governing your behavior in some manner.
Mm-hmm.
So fine. Right? But we wouldn't call that government generally in common parlance.
So, and like everything that I'm seeing in front of me is, something along those lines. It depends on your definition.
Right.
From July 4th, 2014, religion predates governments. It predates civilizations. But I believe religions are created for blah, 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 blah.
Well, and generally the as far as the organization is concerned.
Right. And that's what I'm talking about, right?
People deferred toward the religious individual because they could perform the magic that nobody else understood.
Right. And also they were the ones going, and if you don't do what this magic book says, right, the Bible or whatever their
I'm going to make it
was,
rain, or I'm going to scorch the sun.
Right, yeah. Or if we don't throw somebody into the volcano, we won't have a harvest, or, that kind of thing. Religion was the first form of organized government.
I would agree.
And then one day, somebody was like, we have to have separation of church and state.
Well, I don't know. Okay, so that's...
So I think you're completely way off here. Okay. So if you have a predictable extraction of resources or force being used to alter someone else's behavior, that is government. You see that in chimp behavior.
Wait, what?
And so, yeah, I would absolutely say that, as you pointed out, yeah, family is usually where government starts. And if, in fact, families, stopped beating their children, for example, then we probably wouldn't have it in our minds that this is acceptable human behavior for when government does the same thing on a larger scale.
But we don't call a family a government generally, like, again, in common parlance.
Well, we don't call taxation theft in common parlance.
All right.
Does that make it not theft?
But tithing is the original taxation.
Right. And as far as the government is concerned, generally, like the monarchies, right, that existed, it started with, I am God, right? And then it was, well, I'm ordained by God. And then it was, well, I speak on behalf of God.
But God speaks to me, and therefore I will relay the communication to you.
But it went through this progression because they couldn't keep up the facade that they are God.
Mm.
Right? And then it's, well, I'm not God, right? I'm ordained by God. I've spoken to God, and He's commanded me to be your master and your leader. And then when that didn't work, well, then it's, well, God speaks to me, and I'm the messenger for God, right? And therefore, you must defer to me for all communications to God.
Let's go to your calls and thoughts. Unscreened caller, what's your name, please? You're on Free Talk Live. You're on the air.
My name's Stefan. I'm calling from Georgia.
Hey, Stefan, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I'd like to add a comment on the religion discussion going on at the moment.
Sure.
First of all, I do believe the Sumerians predated Hinduism, the oldest known religion, by at least a few thousand years. So I think society and governance definitely came before religion. But what I called in to say was I am of the belief that the absence of evidence for anything is a good enough reason to disprove its existence. And furthermore, I get into a lot of discussions with fundamentalist Christians, especially given the fact that I went to seminary and used to be one of them, which is the idea of, you can't disprove my God any more than I can prove them, which certainly is not the case across the board, especially when you look at individual religions like Christianity, for example, where you have things like the global flood, which have been nominally disproven over and over again based on the evidence we have and our understanding of the time period. So I definitely do believe that the burden of proof is always going to be on the individual making the claim. And if you are certain that there is no God, then the absolute absence of evidence for that is more than enough of a claim. That's the same way that I am 100% certain there is no afterlife, because it simply doesn't make any sense and because it just cannot be possible.
It also can't be proven or disproven.
The afterlife absolutely can be disproven.
How so? Who knows what happens after you die?
This is the option I always like to use, right? Are you familiar with what a neutrino is?
The star, like the dead star? Or
No, so a neutrino is a tiny, tiny little particle.
Okay.
Its mass might actually be 0. They are so small that they phase through the Earth. And yet somehow we are able to detect these, not nearly as many as there actually are, but we're able to detect them. But when it comes to something like the soul, which is purported to be, your inner mana, things like that carries on after death, we haven't been able to detect this. Now, if the soul is so important and integral to who you are and the being you are, why is it that we are unable to detect something that's substantial? Now, we might have situations where it's like gravity, and people are saying, well, what if it's there and we just haven't detected yet? Well, for example, we don't know what gravity is, but we can detect the force coming off of it. And I think if there was something as powerful as a soul that can, controls our personality, who we are, things like that.
So I generally agree with you on your position, but I want to pose like some questions that make more sense to stoners. Like, whoa.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man. So you're aware that there is light spectrums that the human eye cannot perceive.
Yes, but we've detected them.
And you're aware that there are sounds that the human ear cannot perceive.
Yes, but they have been detected.
And there's the concept of nose blindness and taste blindness and all. Like your 5 senses are not good enough to detect certain things.
Well, yeah, sure.
Okay. And so just because we've detected certain things, again, could just be a limitation on the technology at the moment to detect what the Christians or the people who believe in the afterlife would claim to be the soul. Like there could be certain things, as you said, neutrinos just floating through the earth, right, that are indetectable, or we're not able to perceive them, but exist outside of our realm of perception.
So all processes in our universe emit some form of heat, right?
No.
And they have some sort of energy to them, even if we don't understand what that energy is. And that's why...
Well, Pikla said no, so he's challenging the premise.
Yeah, I mean, like gravity, for example, itself does not emit heat.
Sure it does. It emits waves.
Maybe. Like, there's some argument on that one still, but waves are not heat. Well, and
it's energy.
So hold on. I'd like to go back to what you were saying. So there's a spectrum of light that wasn't discovered until relatively recently.
Well, because you need the technology,
context.
you can't perceive it.
Right.
Yep.
So now, if your original starting point was true, then that couldn't possibly be so, because there was an absence of evidence of X-rays and gamma rays and so on and so forth, because those are too high frequency for us to detect through ordinary means. But that's the thing. There was absence of evidence, but that was not evidence that there was no such thing as X-rays and gamma rays.
Yeah, and when presented with evidence, I reserve the right to change my opinion. But until such time as evidence is presented, I maintain my claim.
Is that an inviolable right?
To have an opinion? Absolutely.
To change your opinion?
Yeah.
It's an enviable right. Hey, thanks for the call, man. We appreciate you. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to join us.
I will change my opinion, regardless.
There's nothing I can do about it.
Will Richie Rich be violable? Will Peakless Mountaineer be the violator? We'll find out. More Free Talk Live is on the way.
When commercials come on, don't push the button. Instead, listen. Even if you don't sell things for a living, you're still selling in the various conversations and transactions that make up your busy day. With money and attention so scarce now, effective communication skills have never been more important, especially if you're a job seeker. So take a lesson from Madison Avenue. Often the fewer words, the more effective the message. Like Jiffy Lube, where you never need an appointment, or the Office Max ad that says, you supply the ambition, we supply everything else. How about online ticket broker StubHub.com, the way in when it's sold out, or CyberCupidMatch.com's seductive, go ahead, it's okay to look. How cleverly and succinctly can you distill your message? For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya with a roundup of the biggest headlines from this past week, a week which ended with Hungary blocking a €55 billion or $55 billion aid package for Ukraine, just hours after an agreement was reached for Kiev to start accession talks with the bloc. Hungary maintains close relations with Russia. EU leaders say Ukraine will not be left without support. The war-torn nation's critically dependent on European and American backing as it continues to fight occupying Russian forces. US President Joe Biden insists failing to provide additional aid to Ukraine would be the greatest Christmas gift to Russia's leader Vladimir Putin. In a meeting on Tuesday at the White House with his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky, Mr. Biden urged lawmakers to pass the supplementary funding. But with a 3-week recess looming, the hopes of Congress reaching a deal by the end of the year remain in the balance. Also on Capitol Hill, the House of Representatives has voted to formally open an impeachment inquiry into President Biden, accusing him and his family of corruption. Ira Spitzer has the details.
On this vote, the yeas are 221 and the nays are 212. The resolution is adopted.
The inquiry against President Biden will give them more power to gather evidence ahead of a possible impeachment attempt early next year. Republicans have long alleged corruption in the Biden administration, much of it centered around the president's son Hunter Biden's business dealings, although they have yet to present any conclusive evidence of wrongdoing. Biden said Republicans were wasting time on what he called a baseless political stunt.
As Israel continues with its bombardment of Gaza, there are growing rifts between the government there and the administration stateside, with Joe Biden criticizing Israel for what he calls its indiscriminate bombing, which he fears is losing the country international support. US intelligence suggests nearly half of the Israeli munitions dropped on Gaza are what's known as dumb bombs, in other words, unguided and therefore potentially imprecise. Mr. Biden hit out at what he labels the most conservative government in Israel's history, condemning it for seemingly not wanting a two-state solution. This whilst the United Nations General Assembly voted in favour of a draft resolution urging an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. More than 3/4 of the 193-member General Assembly backed the move, which was vetoed by the United States in the Security Council. Here's Jody Jacobs from the UN headquarters in New York.
Before the vote, both the United States and Austria tried to push for amendments to the text, which it says did not condemn Hamas, but this failed. Egypt, who tabled the resolution, told the General Assembly that the resolution is a very simple, clear and explicit one, saying the killings need to stop. Resolutions by the General Assembly are not legally binding, but they do carry immense moral weight.
And representatives from 198 nations have agreed on a climate deal at the COP28 summit in Dubai. The text calls on all countries to transition away from the use of fossil fuels, but not to phase them out. And that's your week in review.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Don't say the only 7 words you're not allowed to say.
Yes, otherwise these mother FCCers might have a problem with it.
You've got such an extended vocabulary, just don't use 7 of them, and you're fine.
FCC me in the donkey because I love Jesus.
In the donkey.
Yeah.
The other day, I think it was Steve Classic. He was like, can we say the D word?
No, that was me.
Was it you?
Yeah.
And I was like, let's go with Richard.
Yeah, that was me.
But like, yeah, you could say Dick.
Okay.
But it was interesting that like I think, and a caller even said, yeah, he was being a Richard, right? I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Everybody's saying Richard now.
Well, and it's because like it was the Stefan Molyneux thing about, organizing society peacefully. If you just don't be a dick,
right,
then things go smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a well overlooked thing, particularly I think, or I feel anyway. I evidence, I don't know, but I feel like the amount of minutia arguments that I've seen amongst libertarian types, voluntarists, anarchists, libertarians, that kind of thing, is that they're totally forgetting about don't be a dick.
Yep.
Right? Like, I think, like, the non-aggression principle and don't be a dick need to be on equal terms. Right?
Well,
they need to be as flouted, as, held up as a thing, because, like, without the don't be a dick one, everybody's kind of a dick.
Maybe, but there's
and then we all starve to death.
But you can be that guy, right? Wherever you just don't be that guy, right? You can be that guy and still not violate the non-aggression principle. Just no one wants to be around you, right? So then you're that guy alone.
That people don't realize about the whole non-aggression principle thing. There's always that possibility where it's like, okay, well, you were doing something that is technically non-aggressive, but I value harming you more than I value my continued status as someone that others do not aggress upon. Okay. That is a thing that happens, so don't be a dick.
Well, humans are humans, right? Like, the non-aggression principle,
them's fighting words,
is something, that I would hope most people can get down with, right? Like, it's that old kindergarten thing, do unto others, right? Don't hit, don't steal, don't take people's stuff, right? These are just simple concepts that we all learned as children.
Yeah.
That we all agree are pretty good concepts.
But if you're going like, I'm not touching you, and then you get punched in the face, you probably should have saw it coming.
Right. And that's what I'm saying is, like, humans are humans, and they're going to do human things, which is why I think Peakless and I have talked about this frequently. The opportunity for redemption needs to exist.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so if you add don't be a dick, right, then you also must take into account redemption. So if you ever are a dick and you realize you've been one, you can be like, dude, I'm totally sorry I was a dick. How can I make it up to you? Or here's a token of my, whatever.
But if you're being that guy, if you're being a dick and someone punches you, right, then who needs to apologize to whom and whom needs to be redeemed?
Well, the guy who punches you is no longer entitled to my not punching him.
Yeah, okay. The aggressor.
Until he redeems himself?
Until he redeems himself.
Okay. What about the guy being a dick?
What about him?
Well, Captain just said...
He has a right to me not punching him, and that's all he has a right to.
Okay.
He does not have a right to me undermining every aspect of his life.
Okay. I mean, Captain, we were talking about redemption as the guy who, being a dick, needed to be redeemed.
I want to talk about somebody who, at least in this particular instance, is not being a dick.
Amplifier?
That's an amplifier.
Ooh.
That's right.
Ooh, the opposite of being a dick.
This particular person has visited amps.freetalklive.com, where he has decided to give $5 per month to the AMPS program. Now, what is an AMPS program? Well, AMPS stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. And so Jesse Thomas is today's amplifier. Normally, I insert a joke about never trust a man with two first names, but because he's an amplifier, I'll leave that one be.
Ron Paul.
Ooh.
Politician.
Okay, I trust him.
So
you would.
Okay. So Jesse Thomas is a silver level amplifier. And he gives $5 a month because, I presume, he enjoys the hosts, the co-hosts, the callers, the listeners, the message of peace, freedom, prosperity that we bring to the airwaves. And, more importantly, he wants to see this show grow. We're on around 180, maybe 200 radio stations right now. We could be on 250, 300. 350 is not out of the question, or more. It's all up to you, the listeners. If you like this program, if you like the content, if you enjoy the message that we bring, please consider becoming an amplifier over at amps.freetalklive.com. Thank you again to Jesse Thomas
One of these days, you're going to thank someone who just forgot to cancel their subscription.
And, I'm pretty sure I've done that already.
Okay.
Well, thank you for that last one anyway.
Yeah. Thank you for not canceling your subscription. We appreciate you. So we've been talking about, well, we've kind of been all over the place with religion and atheism. And
I wanted to make just one quick note on the if the soul's this powerful thing, then why haven't we had some detection of it? It's like, okay, dark matter, dark energy, we have no detection of those, but people believe they exist and they're intensely powerful. And there's this thing called renormalization where they cancel out this insane amount of energy because it all seems to be balanced everywhere in the universe. So there's wiggle room.
I think, I would suggest that that's your language at work, right? It's an unknown phenomenon of which they put a label on.
Okay. Cool.
Yep.
I'm just saying, that is the sort of a thing that is indicative of the possibility of something like a soul in the sense of a physical thing as opposed to a social thing, which as a social thing, it's a really useful construct because it lets us do morality really quickly and easily.
Sure. And again, as far as the constructs are concerned, useful for certain things, but not really existing.
I'm pretty sure, segue, I'm pretty sure that, Peakless, you're familiar with Peter St. Onge.
Mm-hmm.
Are you?
Yeah.
Nope.
He's an economist.
Okay.
I listen to his weekly roundup podcast.
He does a great podcast. He's on the Twitter, and I follow him there.
Okay.
He's great on, particularly from our perspective.
Okay.
I don't know if he himself is a libertarian, ANCAP, anarcho-capitalist.
I may have read his
anarchist,
work, but I don't
anything. I have no idea, but it would actually mean more to me if he's not. Because his presentation almost caters specifically to people who are.
Okay.
So at any rate,
well, I think what happened to him is the same thing that happens to everyone who learns Austrian economics.
He is a doctor, by the way, PhD.
Okay.
Once you learn Austrian economics, you either become good or evil. Either you use this knowledge to be horrible to everyone for your own advantage, like your John D. Rockefeller, that sort of type, or you go, oh, I'd like to not be evil.
So this is from profsaintonge.com, profstonge.com. So his own blog.
All right.
Fed delivers the champagne to Wall Street and to Joe Biden's reelection. It's Christmas on Wall Street as the long-awaited pivot is here, with Jerome Powell announcing the Fed's giving up on inflation and turning to that long-promised recession.
Giving up? What does that even mean?
The so-called Federal Reserve dot plot, which measures Fed members' rate projections, went dovish, meaning inflationary, for the first time since the pandemic. Can you expand on that in layman's terms? What does he mean? The so-called Federal Reserve dot plot, which measures Fed members' rate projections, went dovish, meaning inflationary, for the first time since the pandemic.
Yeah, so I think that everyone's making a much bigger deal out of this than it looks to me like it is. But so here's what happened. Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, got up there and talked about this and released these this plot of okay, here is what the several members of the Federal Reserve, we each got together and we will release this anonymously, but each one of these dots represents what we think the future federal funds rate will be for the next 3 years.
Okay, so continuing on, Bloomberg was downright giddy, trumpeting that the great monetary pivot of 2024 is nigh. Stocks, bonds, and currencies all soared as the financial markets filled up the punch bowl and lined up the coke and hookers just when Joe Biden's election campaign needed them most.
Yeah, I'd also like to point out that even on the dot plot, two of the dots, who knows which two those are, but two of the dots said, no, it is going to be completely exactly where it is right now for all of 2024.
Sorry, fill me back in a little bit, because There's a lot of language in there that I'm trying to wrap my head around.
So basically, the Fed got up. They drew a graph with some dots on it.
What do these dots represent? Like where they think the interest rates are going to be?
Exactly.
Right.
Okay. Exactly. What each of them makes their guess of what the average federal funds rate is going to be for these years, and two of them guessed that that next year it's going to be exactly where it is right now on average all through the year, and the rest of them guessed that it will be lower as an average next year.
And people got excited on Wall Street that that the projection is going to be lower.
Right.
Okay.
So excited. Well, we'll find out in a minute. All courtesy of a Federal Reserve that apparently has traded the Paul Volcker baseball cards for a very clever inflation-fighting strategy of let her rip and hope for the best. Indeed, Mike Alfred ventured that Janet Yellen and the big guy himself, Janet Yellen, intervened with some pointed dialogue with Jerome Powell about their ability to punish the Fed for wrong think.
So, if we go back to your claim about the Austrian economists and the Austrian economics, right? The inflation, they control the inflation. They're in charge of the money supply, at least for the United States. They're the central bank.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if they want to reduce inflation,
well, kinda. So they are in control of it, sorta. So the other
they control
side
the
of
inflation. They don't control the effects.
So here's the thing. The other thing is that, and this is sort of the unspoken actual thing that the Fed does, is the money printing. But the money printing is done at the behest of Congress. So Congress says we're going to spend this much more money than we took in taxes.
Okay.
Now at that point, I mean, there's not much that the
Federal
Fed
Reserve's
can do.
hands are tied.
Right. They have to wiggle something or waggle another something so that much money comes into the federal government's spending budget.
So what's the point of calling it separate and not a real government agency?
So we get to pretend that the government doesn't print money,
right?
Because that would be illegal if that's what they were doing.
I thought they were just compelled to buy treasury bonds, and that's how the money got introduced.
We'll get to the point of this in just a minute, but we're you guys are talking sort of around the happenings, right? The thing that happened is, the Fed got up, they did a song and dance. Right, and then what happened?
Same old story.
And then what happened?
And everyone's like, it's party time.
Markets reacted like a San Francisco junkie on a UBI.
Yep,
pooping in the street.
With literally everything going up except the dollar.
On Wall Street.
Including gold, which rallied $60 in the space of hours. As Bloomberg approvingly put it, virtually no corner of financial markets was left out. It was the biggest one-day rally since 2009. Again, with the exception of the dollar. Notably, the exception of the dollar, right?
Okay.
Everything else, they did this like big song and dance, big PowerPoint presentation, big graph with dots, and the market was like, yeah! But like the dollar remained unaffected.
Right.
Notably.
Yeah.
Why did markets go wild? Well, because despite ongoing inflation, Jerome Powell just signaled the green light for a speculative mania. Last year was a lean one on the street, with Dark Jerome warning that pain is coming as he strangled financial markets to clear room for the federal government to spend everything their dark little hearts crave. Now Jerome apparently traded his dark warnings about exuberance with all but begging Wall Street to exuberate away. The problem is, given inflation's nowhere near licked, this is essentially the Fed giving up. In a recent article, Peter St. Onge worried about the Fed repeating the catastrophic events of the 1970s stagflation, when it eased in the eye of the storm and setting off another inflationary crisis. In fact, looking at core inflation, it's merely running at double the Fed's target, yet here's Jerome desperately flicking matches on the next tissue fire boom.
So again, help me out. What does the Fed giving up, quote unquote, look like?
Okay, so what everyone thinks that the Fed has done is that they will no longer be suppressing prices by having these high interest rates.
Okay.
Now, that's what everyone has come to the conclusion that this means. That it means, A, there's not going to be any further rate hikes.
Okay.
And B, that the rates will in fact come down.
Okay.
Both of which mean that there's going to be easier money for everybody. than if they hiked rates again.
Okay. So inflating another bubble.
Yeah. Now here's the thing, though. They didn't actually do anything. They kept rates exactly where they were at, but they announced that in the future they will bring them down at some point next year.
Everybody went, yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, that's how speculation works.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and it's worth pointing out that if they ever do, we are going to see a stock crash. Like almost, I'm pretty sure like every single time. No, there were 2 times where they brought rates down and it didn't immediately get followed by a recession.
Okay.
And a stock crash. Because, like, whenever they bring the rates down, it signals that, hey, we had to bring the rates down because something's broken. So everyone goes, crap, I don't know what's broken. They sell all their stocks. Stock market plummets in a flash crash. Then people, like, kind of figure out what it was that broke, and they reallocate their resources. So a bunch of very rich people get stocks very, very cheap, and everyone's retirement plan takes a serious hit.
Yeah, because you've gotten out of the stocks and into a devalued dollar.
Right.
All right.
So what's next? The Fed's praying for a soft landing, but the biggest problem is it's not going to work. This says the Federal Reserve.
Nice.
The Federal Reserve has never, in its 110 years of existence, pulled off a soft landing. Yeah, keep in mind the Fed is only 110 years old. And
They've already devalued the dollar down to nothing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The media hypes it every time, but it's a myth, a mirage, a fairy tale to help Wall Street traders sleep. In fact, the Federal Reserve has a single recession play. Hike till it breaks, then flood money to bail them out. The Fed just advanced us to the next stage to the 70s. What comes next is mass bankruptcies, layoffs, and daily articles about the famous misery index that we thought were a distant memory.
Let's pretend for a moment that we don't care about cryptocurrency. I know it's difficult, but for the people who are in the stock market who aren't going to move into
remember
crypto,
that dark world.
Well, there are people in the stock market.
And the Fed. Oh, sorry.
There are people in the stock market that aren't
pretending too hard.
Aren't going to get into crypto. Don't care about crypto. That's not where they're going to move their money.
Okay, fine.
Fools, fine. Right? Like, what's
hypothetically speaking?
What is their play?
Gold.
Okay.
Yeah, gold, real estate, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know,
so stock market crashes, real estate, and gold goes up.
Yeah.
Right?
I have to think so. Real estate's kind of a sticky wicket because of the way it's all like financed and taxed and the banks and all that kind of stuff. But generally speaking, owning land almost is never a bad idea.
Yeah, it's kind of how they at least used to bribe their voter base.
Okay.
Was because you had a whole bunch of voters. The largest chunk of voters was baby boomers, most of which owned their own home.
Boomers?
So the people with the money already have the land because poor people don't have land or houses.
Right.
And it's gotten worse over the last few years.
So your question is, what's the poor people's
It's
play?
going to get better. It's not going to. Well, my question was the people on Wall Street.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Like the people with the poor people, they have no choice in this.
Yeah.
They're just going to get poorer because they can't do anything.
A lot of them are going to buy treasuries, which it's their version of having dollars.
Okay. I just don't know how you get. I don't know how you go from stocks, which presumably indicate some sort of value in whatever company you're buying into worthless dollars, and that's the best play you have. I'm selling everything.
Yeah, no, that's the thing, because dollars have a predictable rate of decline.
Okay.
Whereas stocks have a completely unpredictable outcome. Well, and if you look at the big movers and shakers, Berkshire Hathaway, J.P. Morgan, the heads of these things are selling huge amounts of their stocks.
Got it.
So, yeah, that is exactly what they're doing. They are moving from stocks, which tend to go up, but sometimes crash, into dollars. Now, if you wait until the stock market crash and you're already in dollars, and then when there's so-called blood in the streets, even if it's yours, that's when you buy. You spend your dollars or dollar equivalents, sell your treasuries, whatever to get those stocks, then you get right back in where you were on the cheap, have a whole bunch of extra money, and have more stock.
I want to give just a little bit of a 101 to the lay people in listener land, because when we start talking about economics, there is all this language that when you start using these words, people sort of what that means, and they kind of tune out or whatever. So as a person who spent a large portion of his life very poor, I can tell you the layman's version of some of these things. So you're living paycheck to paycheck. You make less than what your outgo is. You're just worried about buying food, paying your rent, that kind of a thing. How can you possibly shield yourself from this oncoming economic storm?
That would be good information.
So the first thing I want you to understand is, what is an asset, right? When we talk about economics, oftentimes people say, well, you have to leverage your assets, okay? So in poor man's terms, me having been a formerly poor person, the only asset that I really ever had was an electric guitar, right? Now, this asset I was able to leverage by taking it to the pawn shop and obtaining a loan on said guitar.
Right.
Let's say the guitar was worth $500. You take it to the pawn shop. At most, they're going to give you $100 on a loan that you have to pay within 30 days. Hopefully, you've looked ahead at your pay schedule, what your rent is doing, right? What your bills are, and you've determined that yes, I can indeed either pay back this loan in its entirety or at least pay the interest on it when the 30-day period ends, so that I can buy myself another 30 days to pay off the whole thing. So let's say the interest rate is $30, right? You borrow $100, you owe $130 to get your $500 guitar back, right? You're leveraging the asset, the guitar. Leveraging means pawning, right? You're getting money. Somebody's loaning you something on your asset so that you can pay your bills.
Right.
This is layman 101.
Yeah. Leveraging your asset is using your asset as collateral for a loan.
Right. So that you can maintain whatever, your lifestyle is, pay your bills, pay your mortgage, whatever it is. That's kind of the thing. So now you've engaged in a market opportunity, right, where now you have to figure out how you're going to get the money to pay that off, right? And with a pawn shop loan, it's pretty easy. You either pay it off in full, get your guitar back, or you pay the $30 and they renew it for a period, whatever that period is. Some pawn shops are 1 month, 30 days. Some pawn shops are 90 days. So that $30 might be due in 90 days just to renew the loan. They'll continue to hold on to your asset until you either pay it off, or pay the interest, or you do neither, and then you have lost the asset. The asset now becomes theirs.
How is this helping poor people?
I'm explaining terminology.
Okay.
All right. Poor people frequently believe that they have no leverage, because living paycheck to paycheck, I can't save anything. I can't buy real estate.
I'm not going to pawn my food.
I can't. Well, no, you can't. But oftentimes people neglect to look at what they do have as an asset that they can leverage. And so that's all that means, is that you have something that somebody else might value. You could sell it. You can get a loan on it. These are things that a lot of people don't take advantage of.
And buy into the stock market when it's blood in the streets?
I'd put it into something like crypto myself, but that's just me. 603-283-6160. More Free Talk Live is coming up, including who hands out medical records.
Free Talk Live. There's only one place you could have sex without everybody else knowing about it. That's in the bathroom. Unless you want to go back into the crew quarters, which might give you bonus points. The Mile High Club awards you, I suppose, based on the amount of times that you've entered into the club. Not only do you want to be in the club, you want to be the top dog.
Yeah, right? You got to be a premier member.
So I would think there'd have to be points for location on the plane, who
you encountered with. Were you there with your girlfriend? Did you take her into the bathroom? Did you manage to get a stewardess into the bathroom with you? Did you manage to get the girl that you just happened to be sitting next to on the plane? I mean, so all of these things could be worth.
Oh, man. To be a part of the Mile High Club, what's the criteria?
You have to
copulate in the air.
Yeah.
What defines copulation? Who has to have an orgasm? Does there have to be an orgasm?
Or do you just have to stick it in and pull it out?
Is it just penetration? Bam, bam. We're out of here. Mile High Club, give me my card.
Yeah.
You know?
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern at freetalklive.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya with a roundup of the biggest headlines from this past week, a week which ended with Hungary blocking a €55 billion or $55 billion aid package for Ukraine, just hours after an agreement was reached for Kiev to start accession talks with the bloc. Hungary maintains close relations with Russia. Pablo Gutierrez reports from Budapest.
Prime Minister Viktor Orban vowed to oppose Ukraine's EU membership in the future. Orban, during his weekly radio address, said Hungary faced economic difficulties in 2023, but dealt with them on its own. He also expressed his reasoning for his veto on the EU's plan to give €50 billion in aid to Ukraine, saying it could negatively affect Hungary.
EU leaders say Ukraine will not be left without support. The war-torn nation's critically dependent on European and American backing as it continues to fight occupying Russian forces. US President Joe Biden insists failing to provide additional aid to Ukraine would be the greatest Christmas gift to Russia's leader, Vladimir Putin. In a meeting on Tuesday at the White House with his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky, Mr. Biden urged lawmakers to pass the supplementary funding. But with a 3-week recess looming, the hopes of Congress reaching a deal by the end of the year remain in the balance. Also on Capitol Hill, the House of Representatives has voted to formally open an impeachment inquiry into President Biden, accusing him and his family of corruption. Ira Spitzer has the details.
On this vote, the yeas are 221 and the nays are 212. The resolution is adopted.
All 221 House Republicans voted to move forward with the impeachment inquiry, while all 212 Democrats were in opposition. The inquiry against President Biden will give them more power to gather evidence ahead of a possible impeachment attempt early next year. Republicans have long alleged corruption in the Biden administration, much of it centered around the president's son Hunter Biden's business dealings, although they have yet to present any conclusive evidence of wrongdoing. In a statement, Biden said Republicans were wasting time on what he called a baseless political stunt.
As Israel continues with its bombardment of Gaza, there are growing rifts between the government there and the administration stateside, with Joe Biden criticizing Israel for what he calls its indiscriminate bombing, which he fears is losing the country international support. US intelligence suggests nearly half of the Israeli munitions dropped on Gaza are what's known as dumb bombs, in other words, unguided and therefore potentially imprecise. Mr. Biden hit out at what he labels the most conservative government in Israel's history, condemning it for seemingly not wanting a two-state solution. This whilst the United Nations General Assembly voted in favour of a draft resolution urging an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. More than 3/4 of the 193-member General Assembly backed the move, which was vetoed by the United States in the Security Council. Here's Jody Jacobs from the UN headquarters in New York.
153 member states have voted in favor of the resolution, calling for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, demanding that all parties comply with their obligations under international law and the unconditional release of all hostages. But before the vote, both the United States and Austria tried to push for amendments to the text, which it says did not condemn Hamas, but this failed. Egypt, who tabled the resolution, told the General Assembly that the resolution is a very simple, clear and explicit one and is long overdue, saying the killings need to stop. Resolutions by the General Assembly are not legally binding, but they do carry immense moral weight. The world has spoken, says one diplomat here in New York, but we'll have to wait and see whether either side in this Middle East conflict adheres to this resolution.
The UK government has won a crucial vote on a controversial plan to send some asylum seekers to Rwanda to have their claims processed there. The new legislation is designed to address concerns raised by the country's Supreme Court in a ruling last month which declared the plan unlawful. Ollie Barrett's been following from London.
If Prime Minister Rishi Sunak had lost this vote in the UK's Parliament, it would have led to questions about the future of his leadership of the Conservative Party. But this victory is not the end of the story in a party which is divided on the issue. Some Conservative lawmakers hope to toughen the legislation as it makes its way through Parliament in the coming months. Others say if the plan is toughened any further, it could breach international law and they would withdraw their support. The bill, voted on by lawmakers, seeks to declare Rwanda a safe country to send asylum seekers to and to reduce the likelihood of legal challenges. The opposition Labour Party says the plan is a gimmick and it would scrap it if it wins the next election.
And representatives from 198 nations have agreed on a climate deal at the COP28 summit in Dubai. The text calls on all countries to transition away from the use of fossil fuels, but not to phase them out. And that's your week in review.
An alarming new study finds that people suffering from stress-related disorders react poorly to being trapped in underwater elevators. A tired 398-month-old throws a tantrum, and a little clay thing is purchased at an arts festival. And now an eerily perfect recap of this week's news. The Catholic Church reversed its long-held stance against gay marriage this week after meeting Connecticut couple Tony and Craig. The vacationing pair dazzled the Pope and assorted clergy with their witty conversation and true loving affection for each other, leading Vatican officials to conclude that love is love and it's silly to put restrictions on it in this day and age. The Chinese people announced that they would be willing to forgive most of the United States' $1.16 trillion debt if Americans agreed to dress up in costumes and perform silly dances for them. Chinese officials encouraged U.S. citizens to wear sequined vests and prance around while slapping their big fat American tummies, promising that the more humiliating the performance, the more debt will be erased. In sports, NASCAR fans are deeply puzzled by a mysterious black family seen attending multiple races.
This is the Onion News Network.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live.
Welcome back. Thank you for tuning in and listening to tonight's edition of Free Talk Live. We are a live call-in radio program where you can call and talk about whatever is on your mind. The telephone number, 603-283-6160. Again, 603-283-6160. In the studio tonight, it's myself, the Reverend Captain Kickass, joining me.
Peakless Mountaineer and
Reggie Rich.
Before we go on, you can
Confuse me with the end.
You can learn about the awesome things happening in New Hampshire in our march towards liberty in our lifetime. And our friends at Porcupine Real Estate are hosting a series of webinars to educate you on the expanded freedoms enjoyed by New Hampshire citizens. Reserve your seat today at move.freetalklive.com. Topics include gun freedom, medical freedom, political freedom victories, and they also have a couple of best practices for moving to the Free State and finding housing. These webinars are super helpful and free to attend once you're registered at move.freetalklive.com. Visit their YouTube channel, Porcupine Real Estate, for videos from past presentations and sign up for upcoming webinars for free at move.freetalklive.com. All right, so I was doing a little bit of 101 on language when it comes to finance, right? Because we start talking about economics, all this language comes up that most people are like, what does that mean? So we've covered what an asset is. We've covered what a loan is. We've covered what leverage is. We talked about this a little bit off the air. I want to talk about how do you leverage something to your advantage? How do you, as a person who can't afford to buy a house, how do you make money in real estate without buying an actual house, right? Because most people are like, well, have you seen the price of houses? I mean, $300,000-$400,000, I think, is the average now.
Find
in
some
the United
friends.
States.
Go in on it together.
There is something sort of
my
newish.
friends are poor.
There is something sort of newish. Fractional real estate investing is a real thing now. I'm not advertising for this company. I do not use this company. I've only been monitoring them for a little over a year now, maybe a year and a half.
I will say I invented it in 2015.
That's fine.
Okay.
But they offer a fractional real estate investing product that you can get into for something like $500 or $600.
Nice.
Mine would have been cheaper.
And the idea is that it's a whole bunch of, it's kind of like a crowdsource, right? A whole bunch of people get together, throw $500 at them. They go out and buy some sort of real estate, which they then turn around and rent. So it's usually an apartment building, something along those lines that they purchase. And then after the management fees and, the mortgage and the taxes and all that stuff is paid, they divvy up whatever profits are left over at the end of the month out of their investments and then give you the option. Would you like to take your profits? So let's say it was, $50, right? You put in your $500 or $600 and they're like, hey, it's the end of, this period. And, you've made $60. Well, let's call it $50 for easy math. You've made $50. What do you want to do? Do you want us to put that in your bank account, or do you want to roll it over and increase the amount of money you've invested so that the next time there's a payout, you get a bigger chunk? So instead of $50, you might get 60 or something like that. So for the first time in human history that I'm aware of, fractional real estate investment is possible even for those who can't afford to buy a house. So
it's been around since 2015.
So if you can get up enough money, right, pawn a guitar, sell a power tool, I don't know, I don't know how you're going to go about doing this, but if you can get up enough money, there are organizations like this one that I'm talking about. I'm not going to name them on air. I don't want to, give people free advertising, right? But you can go find them online where they do this fractional real estate investing, and you can benefit from it even though you can't afford to buy a house. Maybe you're saving up to buy a house, and you want to make that down payment even bigger. Maybe you only have $500 in the bank. Maybe you only have $1,000 in the bank. You can take a portion of that, put it into something like this, get yourself a passive income of $30 to $50 a month going on, and just keep stacking that until finally you have enough for your down payment.
And as I understand, you could use that fractionalized share as part of the collateral to make your down payment on your own house a little easier for you.
Yeah, you can also do creative things like if you are working a Joe job and you have a 401k, you can actually roll money from your 401k into this fractional real estate type of organization. And then now your real estate investment is tax-free. So it's a very interesting concept that, you just have to be smarter than the system to figure out how you're going to benefit from it, whether you're going to do it pre-tax or post-tax and that kind of a thing, right? Like, do your research before you jump into anything. Don't be like, Captain said a thing on air and I did it and I lost a bunch of money. Don't do that.
Smarter than the system is a dangerous game, man. The house always wins.
Yeah, but the house is also always bribing.
Okay.
So I mean, no, that's why in general, home values go up, in spite of the fact that the homes themselves are slowly falling apart.
Yes.
Right. Because they're bribing their voter base. And if you can trust them to continue to bribe this voter base, then this is probably a good investment. But you never know. They might just be like, our math tells us that this much of the boomers have died off, so we're just not going to keep this propped up any longer.
That was my biggest fear at the beginning of this current, I'm going to say, real estate bubble, was the value would go down, but go up in real dollars, right? Like you would lose purchasing power even though you got paid more for your house when you sold it later.
Yeah.
Right.
Because of the inflationary pressures pressed against, the devaluation. I was like, oh man, they're going to think they got away. People who sell later.
And what sucks is that you have to pay taxes on that anyway. Not on the purchasing power, on the added dollars.
Right.
Yeah.
Which were then worth less later.
Yeah. Now, just as a general heads up, I'd like to point out now, people might all be right about them lowering the Fed funds rate in March.
Yeah.
That seems to be what everyone's sort of pointing to. Is that
hold on to that thought. I just want to make a mention. The reason that I mentioned this fractionalized real estate type of investment is because Richie Rich posited the scenario where we're going to pretend that cryptocurrency doesn't exist. If I had $500, I would probably put it into cryptocurrency before I put it into real estate. But if that's not your thing, right, this real estate option might be a good idea.
Well, and crypto's super volatile right now. So, depending on whether that spot ETF gets approval from the SEC or not in January, real specifically between the 5th and the 10th of January, this either will or will not happen. And if it does happen, then crypto's going to go to the moon. And if it doesn't happen, then down to Goblin Town, as they say. And so, good luck on that one. It's super volatile right now. Whereas after that point, after it either does or does not happen, well, then you only have to worry about the volatility of the entire market.
Let me be clear also, then the only reason I put that hypothetical out there is because I'm not convinced that a lot of people who are in the stock market are at the level where they're considering cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wanted to take that out of the equation on what to do if you're in the stock market, right? Again, the presumption is that this is the value of the companies that you're invested in, and the stock crashes. Apple's going to make the same amount of phones they did yesterday, right? Budweiser's going to produce the same amount of beers they did yesterday,
right?
But their valuation is 50% less all of a sudden. That to me makes no sense. But if you're going to sell and you're going to go into dollars, because that's what selling means, you're getting more dollars, and that the dollar's going down through to inflation, and who knows about hyperinflation later. That doesn't seem wise. So they have to go somewhere, and they're not going into crypto necessarily. So where else would you go? And you guys said gold and metals and other things,
right? And that's how real estate came into play.
Here's the thing. So let's take crypto out of the equation here for a second.
Okay.
So I'm convinced that some crazy nonsense is going to happen specifically in March of next year. So you've got this thing called the reverse repo rate, which is basically banks putting their money in a bank.
Okay.
Only it's a super bank, so that you actually get a decent return off it. So that is drawing down to zero in about March. You've got household savings, which is also drawing down to about zero in about March, somewhere between January and April. You've got the bank term funding program, which was the only way they stopped the handful of banks collapsing just an absolute swath of banks. Now that comes up for, in theory, ending in March. And then and the Fed is in kind of a rock and a hard place there, because either they take their 1-year temporary emergency program and make it not an emergency program, which, makes everyone kind of lose faith in the dollar, or they let a whole bunch of banks go under by letting this temporary program end.
Well, even less reason to want to be back in the dollar.
And that's on the 11th of March.
When is the I'm trying to remember what it's called. It's all of the real estate that was previously leased to office space and all that stuff.
Yeah, all the commercial real estate.
When is that March as well?
Well, so that one's way more complicated. There's not just this giant single lump that is set for that.
Okay.
It's kind of spread out over a term. So I don't know.
Okay, all right. For some reason I had it in the back of my head that there was something about that also coming due in March.
Yeah,
where
that
people are going to have to make a decision like, no, I no longer want to lease this, and now all of a sudden there's going to be a bunch of empty real estate that's not leased, which
Right.
means people aren't going to be able to pay their mortgages on the buildings because they don't have enough renters to pay it, and so that'll add to the credit crisis.
Yeah.
One thing I can say to really everybody, my opinion is that do not save in dollars. Like, there is no reason.
I would
there's no
ordinarily
reason-
be with you on that. I think that we are in extraordinary times.
I agree, which
and
is why
at this
I'm saying
particular
that.
moment, I would absolutely say, as is very unusual, you should actually save in dollars.
I would rather
for this very specific window of until we see what happens in March.
like it's the holiday season's coming up, right? Let's say some relative sent me $1,000, right, for Christmas. That's never going to happen, but let's just say it happened. I would much rather take that $1,000 and put it into an electric guitar than I would to sit on it, put it in a bank, and save it, quote unquote. I'd much rather put that $1,000. I know we're pretending that cryptocurrency doesn't, but I'd put it there. I'd much rather put that $1,000 into gold backs, into gold coins, silver coins, something other than dollars, because the dollar has lost over 99% of its value.
But it does so slowly. And that's the thing. If you put your money in something that's going to lose
faster
your...
than ever right now.
I think Peakless is more concerned with volatility.
Right. So that's the thing.
Why I favor the hard asset.
So, like, let's say
but gold is volatile as well.
Well, right. So, okay, let's say that you've got your $500 from Christmas, and you put it into that fractionalized real estate,
Yep.
right? So now you've got a little fraction of real estate instead of your $500,
and it's paying me, $20 a month or whatever.
Right. And
passive income.
And then let's say we have a 2008 occurrence, so that real estate is now worth crap, and you're not getting your rent paid.
Or your $500, in order to sell that asset, that fractional asset, you can only get $200 for it.
Right. So that's a bad situation to be in.
Sure.
Whereas if you'd held on to your $500, wait until this happens, and then you buy your fractional share, you could have gotten two of them.
Right, but you're playing a big game of what if at that point.
Well, that's why you guys are giving different advice.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's one of them is more likely to occur than the other, and one of them is more risk averse than the other.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that's why I'm a big fan of half.
Okay.
So, like, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. So, okay, so I've got this, investable amount of whatever it is.
Yeah.
And, like, okay, I'm concerned that something's going to happen in March that makes things really cheap for me to buy stocks or crypto or gold or whatever. Well, I'll go ahead and put half in now because at the moment prices are going up. So I'll get in before the prices go up because I could be wrong.
Okay.
And I'll keep the other half.
Well, okay, but
and put that in.
I don't want to break even at the end either.
I'm attempting, at least in my mind, to sort of cater my conversation to the poor, right?
Yeah.
Now, I know poor people who, minimum wage job, burger flippers, whatever you want to call them, who, they get like their income tax return every year, or maybe they get
look forward to it.
Maybe they get a little bonus at the end of the year. Their employer's like, hey, there's an extra $100 on your check. Thanks a lot, right?
Yeah.
That kind of a thing. Like, the habits of the poor are such that they rarely get anything that gets them ahead of the curve. And so because they rarely get it, they do things. And I've seen this in action. They'll blow it all on pull tabs. I don't know if you know what pull tabs are, but you go to the bar.
Are you talking like scratch tickets?
It's kind of like that. You go to the bar and it's like 3 tabs on a card. You open them up, and if it's got a line through it, you win whatever the prize is at the end of that thing.
So they're gambling.
Yes,
Right.
it's a gambling game that you play. Or they will go buy scratch tickets. They will buy several lottery tickets, right? They will put that money somewhere far more risky than something like real estate or something like gold or something like property, something like a tangible asset like a guitar or something rare.
Well, I would say that those people are poor by choice then, right? Not necessarily by circumstance. They could do things. They have the capability to do things with their money.
I don't know that most of these people have the knowledge.
Okay.
I don't know that they don't, but I don't know that they do.
Okay.
right? For the folks that I know that are in, we'll call it a poverty-like situation, I do what I can to help educate them and give them some advice when I can, if they ask. But I'm also not going out and I'm not going out and being like, dude, you suck, you're dumb, you don't know what to do, right? Like I'm not talking down to people. It's your fault you're poor, right?
Well, sometimes it is. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is.
Yes.
Well,
but if they show
partly your fault.
If they show any interest,
your responsibility
in attempting to get themselves out, like I know a guy who
don't buy scratchers.
Recently had a kid, and so it changed his perspective on life, right? But he's like, oh man, I got to start thinking different. I got a kid now. Normally what I'd do with my tax return is go blow it at the bar and buy a bunch of lottery tickets and blah blah blah, right? I'd go to the casino and maybe I'd make out, maybe I wouldn't, whatever. He's like, but now I got to think about stuff.
Yeah.
And like, how do I take
poor is expensive.
Right. And how do I, like, for the poor, really, the big question is how do I take whatever little bit of money I eventually get somehow, some way? Maybe it's because I get paid by the week and this month I get the quote unquote extra paycheck.
Yeah.
That's not dedicated to a thing because the 4 paychecks paid for my rent and whatever, or it's the tax return, or it's some sort of a bonus, or they earned a commission somehow. These are the kinds of things I'm talking about. How does a poor person take some little quantity of money and make that money make money for them?
Not by leaving it in the bank.
Bingo.
But the riskier the proposition, the bigger chance you have of making that a lot of money comes with the greater risk of losing it.
Right. So like you can win the lottery, you're pulled. Yeah. Like all of those really high reward, extremely low probability.
Yeah.
So I run into this with crypto when you're looking at different kinds of cryptocurrencies. So like if you
put
the
new
that in,
ICOs.
Yeah. Like if you put that in Bitcoin, it's not going to zero. It has the lowest probability of going to zero.
Right.
But you also know it's not going to suddenly be worth 1,000 times what it's worth now, tomorrow.
That train has passed.
Right.
The people that got on that train early and got their 10,000-fold returns,
right?
Like we're unlikely to see that in the modern cycle.
If you see that, you have more things to worry about because it means the dollar has poofed,
which is likely as well.
Right.
Poof.
Right. Now,
and it's gone.
Now, a little, look, a new meme coin with a dog on it. Well, I mean, that might very much have as much value as your scratch ticket, but it also might 100x. So you might, put $10 in that, and suddenly you've got $1,000.
I was talking to a friend about this years ago when it was almost at its minimum. And he pulled up the chart and he goes, look at this. Dogecoin was like 0.000003. And he's like, and as he's showing me this, I'm going to invest right now. I want to put some money in right now. I'm like, why? He goes, well, because the downside risk is almost nothing because it can only go down like 2 more decimal points.
Right.
But the upside, like if it ever does swing back into cycle, and it did with Elon, right? It was like a whole dollar.
Right.
And so if you put like $100 in at like 0.00003,
right,
and all of a sudden it's $1, well, you've made out like a bandit.
Yeah.
So
if Doge ever hits 1 penny, I'll be a wealthy man.
Okay.
I don't think it's ever going to, but who am I to say?
So you got in after the dollar spike? Because it did go up to $1.
I did. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And I only did it because I was trying to get another friend of mine into crypto.
Okay.
And of course, at that moment, all the press was Doge.
Yeah.
Right. And he's like, dude, I threw like $100 at Doge. I know it's only worth 0.0001 or whatever the hell it was at the time.
Well, it's actually worth almost 10 cents now. So
I'm like,
you mean if it's worth $1?
No, I'm sorry,
you'll
not
be a wealthy
Doge. Shiba Inu.
Oh,
okay.
Shiba Inu. Yeah.
So he threw $100 at Shiba Inu. Sorry, it wasn't Doge. It was Shiba.
Whatever.
Inu. So he threw $100 at it because that's, I was like, do your research. He's like, no, I'm getting Shiba Inu. He didn't do any research. I'm like, okay, you know what? Just to play along, I'll throw $100 at Shiba Inu as well, and that way he and I can communicate about the markets. Is it going up? Is it going down? What's Shiba Inu up to? How do we what do we call it? Speculate, right, on what
It's
it might do,
speculative.
right? Can we, maybe at some point he'll want to learn how to transduce Shiba Inu.
But if you got $100 to spend,
or something like that,
if you have $100, you're like, I can set this on fire. Like, I care so little about this $100 bill. Then you can speculate on any number of the new coin offerings, the initial coin or any other crypto that comes along that they're pumping and dumping.
I did it because I
out.
consider this particular person a brother of mine, right?
Sure.
And I want to, help educate him on how cryptocurrency works, how wallets work, how speculation works, and all that kind of stuff.
But if you're poor, right, and you can't afford to burn that, maybe you don't speculate on those types of crypto.
Yeah, if I was poor and trying to get out of that with this, I'd be farming airdrops. Like, you can take tiny amounts of money, move it around, and sometimes they will just drop these coins on you. You can sell, I would again say half, and suddenly you've got something that might go up, and you've got some actual money.
603-283-6160. How do poor people create wealth? If you've got an answer to that, give us a call. We've got more Free Talk Live coming up.
Hey, you are going to love the movie Victimless Crime Spree. It's hilarious, heartwarming, and carries a ton of inspiring freedom messages. Feeling down about the lack of liberty in your life? You need to put on this film with some friends and have a good laugh. It's a true story about me and my friends in New Hampshire living free, singing, dancing, and getting arrested. Of course, it's all on video, and the bad guys, the cops, judges, bailiffs, and sheriffs, they all play their part like it's out of a movie or something. You would think we scripted the whole thing, but it's real life. Go ahead and have a watch, and if it's been a while, have another look. I guarantee you'll notice things now that you didn't notice before. And the best part is that you're going to walk away feeling a renewed sense of your own power. You are the master of your destiny, and you will be free in your lifetime. Victimless Crime Spree.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya with a roundup of the biggest headlines from this past week, a week which ended with Hungary blocking a €55 billion or $55 billion aid package for Ukraine, just hours after an agreement was reached for Kiev to start accession talks with the bloc. Hungary maintains close relations with Russia. EU leaders say Ukraine will not be left without support. The war-torn nation's critically dependent on European and American backing as it continues to fight occupying Russian forces. US President Joe Biden insists failing to provide additional aid to Ukraine would be the greatest Christmas gift to Russia's leader, Vladimir Putin. In a meeting on Tuesday at the White House with his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky, Mr. Biden urged lawmakers to pass the supplementary funding. But with a 3-week recess looming, the hopes of Congress reaching a deal by the end of the year remain in the balance. Also on Capitol Hill, the House of Representatives has voted to formally open an impeachment inquiry into President Biden, accusing him and his family of corruption. Ira Spitzer has the details.
On this vote, the yeas are 221 and the nays are 212. The resolution is adopted.
The inquiry against President Biden will give them more power to gather evidence ahead of a possible impeachment attempt early next year. Republicans have long alleged corruption in the Biden administration, much of it centered around the president's son Hunter Biden's business dealings, although they have yet to present any conclusive evidence of wrongdoing. Biden said Republicans were wasting time on what he called a baseless political stunt.
As Israel continues with its bombardment of Gaza, there are growing rifts between the government there and the administration's stateside, with Joe Biden criticizing Israel for what he calls its indiscriminate bombing, which he fears is losing the country international support. US intelligence suggests nearly half of the Israeli munitions dropped on Gaza are what's known as dumb bombs, in other words, unguided and therefore potentially imprecise. Mr. Biden hit out at what he labels the most conservative government in Israel's history, condemning it for seemingly not wanting a two-state solution. This whilst the United Nations General Assembly voted in favour of a draft resolution urging an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. More than 3/4 of the 193-member General Assembly backed the move, which was vetoed by the United States in the Security Council. Here's Jody Jacobs from the UN headquarters in New York.
Before the vote, both the United States and Austria tried to push for amendments to the text, which it says did not condemn Hamas, but this failed. Egypt, who tabled the resolution, told the General Assembly that the resolution is a very simple, clear and explicit one, saying the killings need to stop. Resolutions by the General Assembly are not legally binding, but they do carry immense moral weight.
And representatives from 198 nations have agreed on a climate deal at the COP28 summit in Dubai. The text calls on all countries to transition away from the use of fossil fuels, but not to phase them out. And that's your week in review.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Welcome back. Thank you for tuning in. It is the final segment already.
Wow.
This show has gone by rather quickly of the Saturday night edition of Free Talk Live. In the studio, it's myself, the captain.
And
Pigless Mountaineer.
And
Richie Rich.
We're all like jumping the ends here. That's very nice.
I was just waiting to see if you wanted to go second this time.
No.
Okay.
I'm fine with the rotation, but usually you don't say and then you
I like
caught
to
me
keep you on your toes.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said and before him.
This time I did. That was payback
Right.
for the last time.
I see. All right. So now it's all even?
Even Steven.
Even Steven?
Half.
Yeah. Half. This hour of Free Talk Live has been brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Rising fees, of course, have made Bitcoin rather useless for purchases, but Dash continues to have fees less than 1 cent per transaction, and its features ensure Dash is undefeated as the most useful cryptocurrency in the marketplace. From a tech standpoint, Dash transactions are irreversible, and its network is protected from 51% attacks by their chain locks technology. There's no need to wait for a confirmation before considering a Dash transaction complete, so it's great for merchants. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and it's in multi-crypto wallets as well. It's easy to get and easy to use Dash. Start by learning more at Dash.org. Big thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit Dash.org to learn about Dash. That's Dash.org. All right. We've been talking a whole bunch about economy.
Speaking of ways for poor people to become rich with just a little investment.
Yeah, let's unpretend, like, okay, come back to reality. Cryptocurrency does exist.
Yeah. Oh,
if I'm a young person, like, I don't even have a bank account at this point, right? My parents, I don't know, maybe I'm 10, 12 years old, something along those lines. And, like, I'm starting to figure out that you need money to get by in the world, right? How do you hustle as a kid right now? Well, I think, Richie Rich, during the break, you were talking about you had a box of some candy.
Oh, yeah. This was a negative experience for me because I had a box of candy that I sold parts of it in school to make some money because, kids want candy, and I had some, and I also like money more than I liked the candy at the time.
Yep.
So I sold the candy and then made, a couple bucks off of a box of Pocky.
Okay.
And then my dad stole the money from me because I'm not allowed to sell it, apparently.
Right. So
just like the government.
But taxed at 100%.
Well, you didn't have a license to sell that candy.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're just starting out in life, maybe you have a job, maybe you don't. I don't know. But hustle is one of the, I don't know, man. It's like a tenet of life. For me, anyway. Like, you got to figure out how to hustle up some money when you need it. Now, if you're living at home with your parents, that's great. Continue to do so for as long as you can, as long as you financially can stand it, and, of course, personally can stand it, because that will allow you to save
Walls are
more.
thin, man. Walls are thin.
But, don't just rely on the job to get you by. You have to do things outside the job. You have to hustle, right? Side gigs, side work. Make something, make art, I don't know, do something, sell a service, a product, mow a lawn, snow blow a driveway, shovel a driveway for somebody, all of these kinds of things. This is hustle. You can take a very small amount of money these days, particularly with cryptocurrency, and do okay.
I respect that answer that suggestion, that advice, we shouldn't have to, man. Like, if they didn't devalue the dollar, we could still get away with just working our normal job, having more leisure time, not having to focus our mental energy of what should be recuperating from whatever job we have into doing more work.
Yeah, like you were teasing about a story about the American dream, right? And a lot of what that comes down to for a lot of people is the idea that if you work hard, you can get ahead. And some people believe that used to be true, but isn't true now. And a lot of what would make that true,
you have to work smart.
Well, if we weren't being stolen from every moment of every day by money printing, then it would be possible for honest hard work.
You would certainly earn more.
Ahead.
Yes, you would certainly earn more and get ahead faster than you would be able to today. But absolutely, 100%.
But we live in the absolute peak of human thievery. Throughout the world, everyone on Earth is the constant victim of at least one set of thieves.
Yep.
Every moment of every day. It's the golden age of thievery. So you have to protect yourself with the new technology that has come out to shield yourself from thievery.
Yeah. So you guys are talking about what if. I'm talking about what is.
Yeah.
Right?
What is we live in a world with cryptocurrency.
We live in a world with crypto. We live in a world where, yes, we are at peak thievery. And so the only way for you to get ahead is to hustle. And I'm specifically saying hustle outside the system.
Yeah. And
cash jobs, have a rummage sale, put stuff up on Craigslist for cash or crypto, right? Because Craigslist has that ability. You can put something on Craigslist and go cryptocurrency, okay.
That also presumes you have assets.
Well,
right.
Everyone has assets of some kind. And if you don't, you can make an asset.
Okay.
Right? That's what I'm saying. Like, you have to be creative to hustle.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You have to. It's what is right now. It shouldn't be. I agree with you. But it's just what is. If you want to get ahead, you want to get out of your poverty state, you have to hustle.
Yeah. Well, then the unfortunate thing with what is you have, I'm going to call them the generation, right? The Generation Z, whatever that age.
Pick a generation, sure.
Well, within that age group, like, I'm not talking about boomers and Gen Xers or whatever.
Then announce the age group instead of the label.
Well,
like age what to what?
Teens to mid 20s, maybe even 30s.
Okay, so 15 to 30.
Sure, why not?
Okay,
like that age group is at a point where they look around and they know they're in a bad situation.
Yep.
Right. What am I to do? And one of the easiest options presented to them is vote for this guy and we'll give you some of the rich people's money. And they want the free stuff. Like I want free health care, right? I want universal basic income.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to struggle to go work for some guy, right? Who's, even though he pays me the same as he did yesterday, is worth less today. Like they don't want it. And I agree with them that they shouldn't want it. Why would you do yesterday's work today for less money?
Yeah.
Right. Why would you do that? But the option presented to them is not hustle, because you're getting the same worthless dollars even if you hustle. So tomorrow you got to hustle twice as hard.
Right, but you're missing out on what I'm saying. I'm saying hustle and then take your dollars and put it into something other than dollars.
Sure. That takes a little bit of effort and time and knowledge and whatever.
Creativity.
Sure. But the easier option presented to them is just vote differently and we'll give you the stuff for free.
Yeah, well, that hasn't worked out for anybody, has it?
Depends where you are. Again, if you're on that bottom level of the scale, and I mentioned, I'm not going to mention names because I don't have names, but the example given during the break, right, is there is a person that I am aware of who gets $3,500 a month by the state just because she has some kids.
Right.
Yeah.
And no job, no productive value, but survivable income, generally, at least here in New Hampshire, survivable income with no productivity.
Well,
and why would you not choose that?
And consider the paradise that is California. Now, these people voted for elected representatives that would give them free stuff. And, eventually it accumulated to the point where they can now just walk into any shop, steal as much as they want, as long as it's less than $950 total, and just walk out. And they know that they will be safe. So, they can get as much free stuff as they want.
So why not do that?
So it worked. It worked. Electing people to give them free stuff was very effective.
It's not free stuff.
Well, it's free to them.
It's stolen.
Yes, that's how free to them works.
I understand. And I don't really want to table this discussion, but I did mention before we went to break that there is a story about medical records that I wanted to get to.
So we're tabling discussion, even though it doesn't want to.
So we are for a minute. I just want to make, this is from ArsTechnica.com. CVS, Rite Aid, Walgreens hand out medical records to cops without warrants.
All right.
Now, some folks out there are thinking that, like HIPAA, there's some laws about medical privacy. Why are these people handing out, medical records to law enforcement?
Well, you see, there's a deity, and that deity has chosen the police to... Oh, wait, sorry. Wrong religion.
All of the big pharmacy chains in the U.S. hand over sensitive medical records to law enforcement without a warrant. And some will do so without even running the request by a legal professional, according to a congressional investigation. The revelation raises grave medical privacy concerns, particularly in a post-Dobbs era in which many states are working to criminalize reproductive health care. Even if people in states with restrictive laws cross state lines for care, pharmacists in massive chains such as CVS can access records across borders.
So this is like the morning after pill. All right.
There's a little bit of that. Yeah, you're thinking. Lawmakers noted the pharmacy's policies for releasing medical records in a letter dated Tuesday to the Department of Health and Human Services. Secretary Xavier Becerra, the letter was signed by some reps from different states, said their investigation pulled information from briefings with 8 big prescription drug suppliers. They include the 7 largest pharmacy chains in the country: CVS, Walgreens, Boots Alliance, Cigna, OptumRx, Walmart stores, the Kroger Company, and Rite Aid. The lawmakers also spoke with Amazon Pharmacy. All 8 of the pharmacies said they do not require law enforcement to have a warrant prior to sharing private and sensitive medical records, which can include prescription drugs a person used or uses and their medical conditions. Instead, all the pharmacies hand over such information with nothing more than a subpoena, which can be issued by government agencies and does not require review or approval by judge.
Okay.
I mean, that's despicable.
Yeah, but what are they going after? Like, what cause does the police or whomever have to even inquire? What are they investigating?
Because they feel like it.
Yeah.
Well, then they can just get the whole database and just get access to the whole database. They can look at whatever they want, just integrate it in with the police system.
When you put your private data into a private entity, you should, in my opinion, have some sort of expectation of privacy.
I mean, maybe. I went to a dispensary in California and waited outside because I'm like, I'm not giving them my ID and going into like that database.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is why they do the end user license agreement, right? Is so that it's very clear whether or not. Yeah. Or like, yes, I agree to the terms and conditions. Which, of course you never read, but it is spelled out whether or not they're going to be selling your information or just handing it away. So then when they make this agreement and then they violate it because the cop said so, when they're not legally required to do that, it's definitely a breach of trust.
Yeah. 3 of the pharmacies, CVS Health, the Kroger Company, and Rite Aid, told lawmakers they didn't even require their pharmacy staff to consult legal professionals before responding to law enforcement requests at a pharmacy counter. According to the lawmakers, CVS, Kroger, and Rite Aid said their pharmacy staff face extreme pressure to immediately respond to law enforcement demands, and as such, the companies instruct their staff to process those requests in store. The rest of the pharmacies at least require that law enforcement requests be reviewed by some sort of legal professional, maybe an internal attorney or something like that, before pharmacists respond. But only Amazon said it had a policy of notifying customers that law enforcement had demanded the pharmacy records unless there were legal prohibitions to doing so, such as a gag order.
So, again, we got to get into the minutia a little bit, because they said, we'll give it away without a warrant, but you also said but they were provided a subpoena.
Well, some were, some weren't. Some of them specifically said there, no, if the cop walks up to the counter and asks for this person's private medical details.
So this is the same as when I first went to work at a, let's call it a gas station, a convenience store gas station kind of a thing. They were a chain. And so they had training on, maybe you guys have had this if you've ever worked like fast food or something like that. In a city, they have training on what to do if you get robbed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Somebody comes in, points a gun in your face, give me the money, whatever, that kind of a thing. Basically, just go ahead and do it. Like, that's the training. The training is somebody comes in with a gun, points it at your face, says, give me the money. You go ahead, you give them some money. Right? That's basically the training. Right?
Yep.
This is the exact same training, only now it's pointed at law enforcement. So if law enforcement comes in, and of course they have a badge and a gun, right? They're like, go ahead, give them whatever. We don't care. That's the training here. There's no... There's not even a hint, not even a whisper of like they give a crap about your information in any way, shape, or form.
If this was a violation of HIPAA, someone would be able to bring suit.
It is, and they do.
Even if it's not, they still should no, I'm sorry, this is private information.
Understood.
Please present me or something. You know what I mean?
Well, you're also talking about a cashier who doesn't care about your medical records, right? The cop comes in.
Correct.
They're not going to stand on principle to protect some random person in their computer system.
Right.
Right. Why would they? They're risking. Go ahead.
And look at the perspective of the pharmacy company, right?
Sure.
So you're Rite Aid or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You have the option of you can either risk the ire of the police, which means they might bring you up on obstruction charges. Of course, they're absurd and incredibly unjust, but they might do it anyway. And
or
at the
risk
very
the
least,
ire of the consumer.
Right. You might have a consumer who is so irritated that you told someone about his erectile dysfunction that he does in fact bring you to court for HIPAA. Probably a lower probability, and probably a better chance that you'll win the case. And you'll pay less.
Okay. Well, so then it's
Whereas, how much are you going to lose when it hits the papers that you're being brought up for obstruction of justice?
Well, and you listed like the big 8 competitors. Where else are you going to go?
Right.
You're going to find the local mom and pop pharmacy and rely on them. They might be more privacy oriented, but they're less likely to have what you need when you need it, depending on what your prescription looks like.
Yeah. Less
likely to get it from the bigger manufacturers.
Now,
and this is why you should always get your drugs from the independent dealers.
Drugs. So this only highlights the horrors of statism. And I say that because the biggest threat you have to your personal medical information is not from some unscrupulous guy, right, trying to hack into a database and, grab what info. No, It's from law enforcement itself or somebody, some government agency, right? And these pharmacies are all basically agreeing that, if it comes to law enforcement, we're just going to bend over and hand over your information.
I mean, name a company that doesn't, though.
I can't. However, they should. And that's the point. The biggest threat to your medical privacy is not from some unscrupulous scammer. It's from some unscrupulous government organization.
Yeah.
And how many times have we covered stories where different government agents use their power for some personal vendetta? Happens all the time. So all of these concerns about some hacker might get it. I mean, it's possible.
Yeah.
But you are
far less likely that a hacker get your information and use it for some nefarious activity. Far more likely that a government organization gets your information and uses it for a nefarious activity.
There's not a lot of companies that are going to protect you against the government when it comes to the privacy of your information.
Yeah. I once went to, this is out on the West Coast. I won't name the name of the place, but it's one of these movie theaters where it serves alcohol. So it's a 21 plus place. My favorite place to go and see a movie because the worst
no
thing.
kids allowed.
Yeah, there's like, especially you're going to see like a Marvel movie or something where like, kids are going to be naturally drawn to that. Like, I don't want a bunch of, crying, whining kids, while I'm watching my movie. So I go to the 21 plus place because not only can I watch it with a bunch of adults, but like I can have a beer. Mm-hmm. So I go and I order a pitcher of beer for myself. Because the movie is almost 3 hours long. There's no intermission.
Seems like a lot of bathroom breaks without intermission.
And like, I mean, I can do without that. Like, I have a pretty good bladder, right? Like, but I also didn't want to bother the waitress. They have this little system at this place where if you're out of beer or you need something during the movie, you press a little button and it lights this little light underneath the table in front of you. And so the wait people are standing in back, and once they see a light go on, they kind of run down. They duck down so as not to interfere with the other patrons' viewing of the movie, but they kind of do because it's movement, and movement attracts the eye. And so I didn't want any of that, and I just thought, I'm going to order enough beer for me to get through this movie, and, I'll be done with it, right? I order my sandwich and, that kind of thing, right? So I do that, and the lady goes, oh, I'm sorry, I can't serve you a pitcher of beer. And I'm like, why not? That guy over there just got a pitcher of beer by himself. And she's like, well, it's because you're by yourself. And I'm like, again, this guy over here got a pitcher of beer. He's by himself. She's like, well, I didn't serve him. And I'm like, well, why is it okay for him to get one and not me? And she finally, cops to the fact that, like, she's like, well, yesterday I had somebody come in and order a pitcher of beer for himself and a sandwich, and they left without paying their bill.
Okay.
And I'm like, so you're punishing me for the actions of somebody else?
A lot of times that's how it works, man.
And she's like...
Policies get implemented after companies
She's like, well, I'm just not going to do it. And I'm like, can I... I pulled a Karen. I'm like, can I talk to the manager, please? And she's like, okay, but, do you want your order? I'm like, I tell you what. Just bring me an iced tea and my sandwich. And she's like, okay, I'll go get the manager. And she was upset, obviously. The manager comes down, and he starts talking to me, and the movie starts going. I don't want to be a dick. So I'm like, come on, let's exit the theater, right? So I start talking to the guy. And he's like, well, it's our policy, right? And I'm like, can I see a copy of it? And he's like, well, we don't actually have it written down. And I'm like, come on, man. I've been a manager before. If you're going to have a policy, you want to enforce that policy with your employees. It's important for you to write it down so that all of your employees can see it and they can go, oh, yes, this is the policy. We will follow this policy. I see it here.
Would you have acquiesced if they had a sign that said, we reserve the right to refuse service to anyone?
They weren't refusing service. They were just refusing a quantity of service, a subset of service. I didn't see a sign of that. But my point isn't that. I probably would have acquiesced, at some point. But, like, for whatever reason, I was on that day with my argumentation, my debating skills, whatever it was. Maybe I was just overly personal. Maybe I was baked. I don't remember. But it turns out that what happened is somebody, a law enforcement person, came through and, sort of walked through the theater and saw, what was going on, whatever, and told this particular assistant manager that they couldn't serve full pitchers of beer to single patrons.
Okay.
Right? And I was like, okay. And this guy said it's a law. And I'm like, okay. Did he show you the law? He's like, no. You don't understand. They come in, they just flash badges, and we do whatever they say.
Yep.
And I'm like,
sounds about right.
So there we are. And I'm like, so if I go online right now and I look up Washington state law and I find that there is no law, will you comp my ticket? Because I've already missed the beginning of my movie. I've missed out on my sandwich because, you're giving different treatment to different customers here. And he's like, sure. And so I'm like, okay, well, let me look it up. Hey, I don't find anything, man. He's like, look, man. You make a great debate, and you've been way more like personable than like any other. Like I'm not being a Karen, right? I'm not yelling at him. I'm not, I'm just being logical. I'm debating the man about what he's done and what his policies are and that kind of a stuff. And he saw my point. He comped my He was like,
well, you don't understand, Captain. These are gods and angels, and you are a mere mortal.
That's my point.
They're
point
gonna
is
shut him down.
My
if they
point
break the rules.
is that he flashed the badge and he's got a gun, and so the McManager is going to do whatever the hell he says because he's got the gun and the badge.
Yeah,
that's the way the world really works, people.
Yeah, and even if there was HIPAA 2, where it's illegal to even ask for it without a warrant, there's no chance that any of these cops would face anything for doing so.
We are out of time. Thank you, Richie Rich. Thank you, Peakless Mountaineer. Thank you to our callers and all our listeners. If you missed any part of our program, please visit freetalklive.com and view the archives. Thanks and peace.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with one Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by that treasury. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful, but Dash paved the way